Chapter 776. After witnessing the wonders of the equipment refinement technique, the Star Slayer envoy was shocked when he saw someone refining pills along the way. He became more and more fearful of Chu Kuangren, whom he had never met before. Soon he arrived at the tribe's great hall. Here, he met the Yanwu tribe's leader, Yanwu. Greetings, envoy. Greetings, tribe leader Yanwu. I'm here to meet the sage of your tribe. Can you introduce me to him? Of course. Yanwu nodded. Not long after, Chu Kuangren found out about the Star Slayer envoy. When the Star Slayer envoy saw the skinny young man in front of him, he could not help but be confused. In his mind, the sage who could create the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique should be a sage-like old man. How could it be a young man? Moreover, he did not sense any traces of qi refinement from Chu Kuangren. Were the techniques of alchemy and equipment refinement created by this person? If not for Yanwu's respectful attitude towards Chu Kuangren, he would have suspected that Chu Kuangren was lying to him. Are you Tsang sage? Greetings, envoy. I'm Tsang, but I'm not worthy of being called a sage. If the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique were really invented by you, then you're worthy of the title of sage. Yanwu frowned when he heard the Star Slayer envoy's words. Envoy, what do you mean? The equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique were created by Tsang sage. Are you suspecting something? The Star Slayer envoy smiled. Yanwu tribe leader, you misunderstand me. I don't mean to offend you. It's just that Tsang sage's age is really hard to believe. That's why I asked. The equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique have never been seen before. There's no doubt that it was created by our young master. Green-robed envoy scoffed. It's unheard of in the human race, but not necessarily in the celestial race. The Star Slayer envoy said meaningfully. Envoy, are you trying to say that I'm related to the deities? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Ridiculous. Everyone knows that our young master is a god slayer, yet you think he's related to the deities? Green-robed envoy sneered. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. This time, I have come under the orders of my tribe's leader to invite Xianxia to work in my Star Slayer tribe. Yanwu frowned slightly. Good heavens, he's here to snatch my corner. I appreciate leader Star Slayer's good intentions, but I'm having a good time here, so I won't be going over there to chat. Xianxia, you should know that the Slayer Star tribe is the strongest tribe of the human race. Only there will you be able to display your talents to your heart's content. Furthermore, you should have heard of the origins of my leader, the Slayer Star tribe. He is the son of the human god, the spokesperson of the god. As long as he speaks, the matter of you killing the god will also be resolved. The Star Slayer envoy said patiently. However, Chu Kuangren did not budge at all. He did not say anything more to the other party either. Instead, he simply said to Yanwu, Clan leader, I still have some matters to attend to. I'll leave the envoy to you. Then he left with Qing. Tsang, are you really going to be so ungrateful? The Star Slayer emissary said to Chu Kuangren from behind. However, Chu Kuangren had already left without looking back. Emissary, is there anything else? If you don't, then please leave, Yanwu said indifferently. It would be strange if Chu Kuangren had a good attitude after trying to snatch his corner right in front of him. Yanwu tribe, you're on your own now. The Star Slayer emissary snorted before he flicked his sleeves and left. Inside the Star Slayer tribe. That's what happened. The Star Slayer emissary recounted his meeting with Chu Kuangren. They actually rejected him? The Star Slayer emissary sat on a chair, his fingers subconsciously tapping on the chair's armrest. He said indifferently, Tell me, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? In my opinion, we should just send out our troops. I don't believe that the Yanwu tribe alone can do anything. The muscular man in the tiger pelt said. His body emanated a towering ferocious qi. One look and anyone could tell that he was a man who had experienced hundreds of battles. That's right, it's time for this tribal separatist situation to end. Now that our Star Slayer tribe has a strong army, it's time to swallow up the other tribes, another white-robed man said. When the Star Slayer emissary heard that, he looked at the Yanwu tribe's emissary. You've been to the Yenwu tribe. What's your opinion? The emissary pondered for a moment before he said, alchemy and equipment refinement techniques are not to be underestimated. Moreover, although Tsang is young, if these two techniques were really created by him, he's definitely not someone to be trifled with. In time, the Yenwu tribe will become a huge threat to us. Do you also agree to send out your troops? The Star Slayer emissary pondered. He was not afraid of the Yenwu tribe. It was just that the Star Slayer tribe's current strength was more than enough to deal with one tribe. However, there were 10 major human tribes. If he were to attack the Yenwu tribe, the other tribes might take the opportunity to attack. After all, the Star Slayer tribe had been growing stronger over the years. It had long agitated the other tribes, making them restless. What are you hesitating about? At that moment, an indifferent voice was heard. Suddenly, a golden pillar of light descended from the sky. A vast divine aura enveloped the entire area. Apart from Star Slayer, everyone else was pressed to the ground by this divine aura and could not move at all. Within the beam of light, a figure gradually appeared. He wore golden armor and held a golden spear in his hand. His stern and cold face exuded a sense of majesty. Greetings, Father. Star Slayer hurriedly stood up and bowed. The person before him was one of the 33 Master Gods, the Vajra Master God. He was also Star Slayer's father. Years ago, when the Vajra Master God traveled the world, he passed by a tribe. In order to entertain him, the tribe sent out the most beautiful woman in the tribe to spend a night with him. Who knew that Star Slayer would be born that night? He was the only human in countless years, the son of God. In the past decade or so, the Vajra Master God was also very surprised when he learned of Star Slayer's existence. At first, he did not pay much attention to it. However, later on, he realized that Star Slayer contained immense potential. Having divine power and the ability to cultivate was the best weapon for him to conquer the human race. Hence, he had been deliberately nurturing Star Slayer. Yes, Song of the Yenwu tribe has killed many gods consecutively. His existence has provoked the authority of the gods, so the gods have decided to grant him and his tribe death. I'll leave this matter to you. The Vajra Master God said. Star Slayer was very powerful. He could be said to be one of the most powerful beings aside from the Master Gods. He could even fight a few rounds with the lower-ranked Master Gods. Sending him to fight Song was the common decision of the gods. They wanted to use Star Slayer to see what kind of person Chu Kuangren was. The gods will, huh? I understand now. Star Slayer nodded slightly. Initially, he was worried that the other tribes would take advantage of the situation to attack Yenwu tribe. However, it was the gods who sent him to fight Yenwu tribe. No matter how bold the other tribes were, they would not dare to offend the gods. Soon, news of the Star Slayer tribe receiving the gods' will to fight Yenwu tribe spread throughout the world. Chapter 777. The news of the Star Slayer tribe attacking the Yenwu tribe quickly spread throughout the land, and the Yenwu tribe naturally received the news as well. For a moment, the entire Yenwu tribe was in a state of panic. Even if the Yenwu tribe's strength had increased a lot, the Star Slayer tribe was still the strongest among the 10 tribes. They had a strong army, and no human tribe could compete with them. More importantly, the leader of the Star Slayer tribe was the son of a human deity. In the eyes of the people, he was the representative of the deities. Going against him was almost like going against the deities. Facing the deities, their morale was already weakened by 70 to 80% before they even fought. How could they fight? Leader, what should we do now? Yes, the Star Slayer tribe has more than 10 million warriors, and many of them are cultivators. The Star Slayer himself has divine strength and is invincible. I'm afraid we're no match for them. Yes, I heard that a few years ago, a cultivator went to find the Star Slayer, but he was cut in half by the Windcutter sword that was given by the deities. He did not even have the strength to fight back. Why don't we surrender? Surrender my ass. I'd rather fight them than be a coward. But they still want to fight even if they know they're going to die. This is called reckless, and it's not worth it to lose your life for nothing. How do you know we can't win if we haven't fought them before? The higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe discussed among themselves. Among them, the number 1 warrior, Tu, was arguing with an old man. One of them wanted to fight, and the other wanted to surrender. Yenwu felt a headache coming on as he watched. I didn't expect this day to come so soon, Yenwu murmured. When he invited Chu Kuangren to join the Yenwu tribe, he already had a premonition that they would one day go against the deities. However, this day came too soon. Moreover, they were not facing the deities, but the Star Slayer tribe, which was also a human. It was obvious that they wanted them to kill each other. Everyone, please calm down. At that moment, a cold voice rang out. A young man in a white cloak walked in. When he spoke, there was a mysterious Taoist fluctuation. Everyone's restless emotions were slowly calmed down. It was Chu Kuangren. Greetings, Sage Tsang. Does the sage have any countermeasures against the Star Slayer tribe? Chu Kuangren chuckled at the crowd's questions. It's not really a response. I'll just deal with whatever comes my way. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. What kind of response was that? Let's deal with the ever-changing by remaining constant, Chu Kuangren added. With his current strength, he wasn't afraid of any tribesman coming to find trouble with him. In fact, if someone came to find trouble with him, he would be happy to see it happen. It was the perfect time for him to fight and make a name for himself. He was going to be a king in the future. Just the name of a sage was not enough. What he needed was a solid battle record. Only by displaying sufficient strength could he consolidate his current prestige. Xianxia, do you really have the ability to deal with the Star Slayer tribe? Yenwu asked curiously. Rest assured, Patriarch. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He activated his psyche power and activated the illusory 7 emotions song. This cultivation method could manipulate one's emotions. Under his influence, the panic in everyone's eyes gradually disappeared and was replaced by determination. We believe in Sage Tsang. Yes, the Star Slayer tribe will definitely win. The other side. In the God-defying pavilion. Wind Valley, the Star Slayer tribe is going to attack the Yenwu tribe. Go see if Sage Tsang needs any help. The Star Slayer tribe is going to attack Sage Tsang now? We can't just sit back and watch. Wind Valley nodded solemnly. Star Slayer, is that the son of God? All right, I'll go check it out. There was no time to lose. Wind Valley immediately headed to the Yenwu tribe. At first, he thought that he would see a depressed tribe. After all, everyone was about to face the strongest of the 10 major tribes, the Star Slayer tribe. It was normal for them to be afraid. However, when he arrived at the Yenwu tribe, he realized that everyone was doing what they were supposed to do. Everything was orderly and thriving. There was no sign of danger at all. Has the Yenwu tribe not received the news? Wind Valley asked curiously. That should not be the case. The news had already spread throughout the land. He grabbed a passing cultivator and asked curiously, Fellow Taoist, do you know that the Star Slayer tribe is going to attack you soon? Of course I do. The news has already spread. The cultivator looked at Wind Valley strangely as if to say, It can't be, it can't be. You don't even know about such a big thing? If that's the case, aren't you afraid? Wind Valley asked again. With Sage Tsang here, what do we have to be afraid of? Besides, what's the use of being afraid? If we were afraid, wouldn't the Star Slayer tribe come to attack us? That's impossible. The sage said that the best way to eliminate fear is to face it. As long as we face it calmly and work together, there's nothing we can't overcome. The cultivator raised his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke in a natural manner. When he mentioned the sage, his eyes unconsciously revealed a look of worship. Wind Valley was a little confused. This cultivator's words made him unable to refute. What did the sage do? Did he brainwash these people? Fear was the most ancient emotion of humans. However, in the face of the Star Slayer tribe's attack, Wind Valley did not see any fear in the eyes of the people from the Yenwu tribe. It was as if they had been blocked by something. Wind Valley found Yenwu. He carefully observed Yenwu and realized that he was not as optimistic as the others about the Star Slayer tribe's attack. Although he did not feel any fear, he could still see the seriousness in his expression. Wind Valley breathed a sigh of relief. Is this how a normal person should react? If even the higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe were so optimistic, Wind Valley wondered if the tribe was finished. Where's Sage Tsang? He's resting in the yard. All right, I'll wait for him here then. Wind Valley said. In a yard. Under the shade of a tree, Qin Yi was cultivating. Beside her, Chu Kuangren made a deck chair out of tree branches. He lay on it with his eyes closed. These few days, the news of the Star Slayer tribe's attack had caused the people of the Yenwu tribe to panic. Fortunately, Chu Kuangren appeared to calm the people and used the 7 Emotions illusory song to control their emotions. That was the reason why they did not cause any trouble. As for the higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe, he did not overdo it with the 7 Emotions illusory song. After all, the lower-ranked people of a tribe could maintain a positive and optimistic attitude and even blindly follow others. However, as the higher-ups of the tribe, the leaders had to remain clear-headed and not be too affected. After this incident, it could be said that he had gained a deeper understanding of the application of the illusory 7 Emotions song. Soon he met with Wind Valley. When the other party asked him what help he needed, he only asked the people of the God-defying pavilion to stay put. Now was not the time to expose the human tribe's true strength. Chapter 778. I don't want to admit it, but the Slayer Star is very powerful. It can be said that on this piece of land, other than the overgods, no other deities, humans, or wild beasts are a match for him. Not only does this person possess divine strength, but he is also proficient in Qi refinement. Divine strength aside, his Qi refinement strength alone has already reached the level of an upper heavenly honorable. Song Xianxia, are you sure you can defeat him? Fenrir said solemnly. He glanced at Chu Kuangren. There was still no trace of Qi refinement on his opponent. Although mind power was very mysterious, Fenrir still felt a little uncertain. Of course, Chu Kuangren smiled calmly. A Slayer Star was not worthy of his attention. Not long after, the vast army of the Slayer Star tribe was approaching the warrior Flame tribe. From afar, there were soldiers armed with swords and spears, mounted on all kinds of wild beasts, and even people beating drums. The sound of drums was like thunder, shaking the heavens and earth. The might of this army was boundless. Before they even got close to the warrior Flame tribe, their ferocious Qi had already engulfed them. The guarding Qiong Qi, Thunder Beast, and other wild beasts could not help but tremble in fear. They had no intention of fighting back. How terrifying! Has the human race developed to this stage? Over the years, with the popularization of cultivation techniques, the human race is no longer as weak as they used to be. I just didn't expect them to develop to this stage. How surprising! The few wild beasts were conversing. Behind them was the Yenwu tribe's army that was also on standby, and the one who stood at the forefront was none other than Chu Kuangren. He looked into the distance and vaguely saw a magnificent golden chariot in front of the Slayer Star tribe. The chariot was pulled by 9 Xiongqi beasts, and on the chariot sat a mighty man dressed in golden armor. He sat upright on a large chair made of animal skin, holding a large sword in his hand, and his eyes were slightly closed. He sat very steadily, like a statue. Although his eyes were closed, his aura was extremely terrifying. Looks like he's the Slayer Star. Shao AI, analyze it. Chu Kuangren said in his heart. The spirit of omniscience was activated. Information about the Slayer Star kept appearing in his mind. The human god's child. With the combination of the King Kong deity's strength and Qi refinement, it's no wonder he's undefeatable. Chu Kuangren chuckled. If Chu Kuangren had not appeared, Zhan Xing would have had a high chance of becoming the leader of the human race. Other than his strength, there was also the fact that he had the support of the deities behind him. Based on that alone, not many people could compete with him. Even the current God-defying pavilion did not have enough power. After a while, the Star Slayer tribe's army arrived in front of the Yenwu tribe. There were at least a few million people. An army of this scale was very rare in this era, not to mention that there were many cultivators among them. The people of the Yenwu tribe gripped their weapons tightly. Those with weaker mental fortitude were so scared that their faces were pale, and their bodies could not help but tremble. Can we really win against such an army? Some of the soldiers' hearts were already wavering. Even Yen Wu and Fenrir could not help but wear a solemn expression. Everyone, don't be afraid. We still have Zhang Xingxian. A soldier said. Hearing this, everyone looked at the white figure standing at the front. Chu Kuangren had a white cloak draped over his shoulders. His body looked a little frail, but his posture was more imposing than anyone else's. Her posture gave off a reassuring feeling. The sage is indeed a sage. He can still be so calm in the face of an army of this scale. It's as if he doesn't care about them at all. That's right, he's too amazing. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren's back with admiration in their eyes. The sage's calmness makes us feel more at ease. Yen Wu chuckled. It's just a small scene. Chu Kuangren smiled. Hearing his words, Yen Wu and Fenrir's mouths twitched a few times. Was this considered a small scene? What was a big scene then? The sage was indeed a sage. There was no way they could compare. In fact, Chu Kuangren did not care about the army in front of him at all. Whether it was in terms of size, strength, equipment, or any other aspect, this army was not worth mentioning to him. After seeing the hundreds of millions of soldiers and warships in the extraterrestrial battlefield, this army was no different from playing house to him. The Star Slayer tribe's army stopped in front of the Yenwu tribe. A man rode out on a ferocious beast and said loudly, "We are here on the orders of the deities to attack the Yenwu tribe. However, the deities are merciful. As long as you surrender and hand over the god Slayer Tsong, the deities promise to let you live." His words caused a commotion in the crowd. Yenwu stood up and said, "Sage Tsong taught us human alchemy and equipment refinement techniques. He also saved the Yenwu tribe's life. We will never hand him over to the deities. If you want to fight, then let's fight." Fight, fight. The Yenwu tribe's army roared. Chu Kuangren preached in the Yenwu tribe, teaching them cultivation techniques, equipment refinement, and alchemy. He also taught them some survival experiences such as smelting, weaving, terraced farming, irrigation, and so on. In the Yenwu tribe, from the cultivators to the commoners, everyone respected him. It could even be said that Chu Kuangren had successfully replaced the deities and become their new faith, asking them to surrender their faith. How was that possible? Stubborn. The person who persuaded them to surrender snorted and walked back to the army. Then, a person walked out from the army. That person was wearing a tiger's skin and had a fierce aura. "Since you refuse to surrender, then die. I am the Star Slayer tribe's Wuxia. Who dares to come out and fight me?" Yen Wu's eyes were solemn. This person is the Star Slayer tribe's #1 warrior, Wuxia. He's strong enough to become an emperor. An emperor was considered an expert no matter what era it was. In the original Yenwu tribe, there was only one emperor, Yen Wu. "I'll go and fight him." Beside Yen Wu, Atu, who was wearing a black armor and holding a long spear, said eagerly, "Atu, you've just become an emperor. I'm afraid you're no match for this person." Yen Wu was still worried. Atu, the Yenwu tribe's #1 warrior, had become an emperor under Chu Kuangren's guidance. However, his cultivation level was still far from being comparable to Wuxia, who had been an emperor for many years. "Let him try." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Huh, even the sage has faith in me." Tu laughed. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Wuxia. The emperor's chi on his body circulated, and a domineering aura erupted. "Someone, tell me your name." Wuxia sneered. "Yenwu tribe's #1 warrior, Atu." Tu said loudly. "Judging by your aura, you must have just broken through to the emperor realm not too long ago. With your strength, you're no match for me." Wuxia sneered as he slashed out with a long saber in his hand. Atu stabbed out with his long spear too. The long sword and long spear clashed. Even though Atu's cultivation level was not as high as Wuxia's, he was still evenly matched with his opponent. "How's this possible?" Wuxia's expression changed. Then he roared and swung the long sword in his hand, clashing with Atu's long spear. Wuxia's battle technique was brilliant. It did not take long for him to find an opening and slash Atu's body, sending him flying. Humph, that's all you got? Hu Sha snorted. Are you tickling me, your grandpa Atu? At that moment, Atu stood up and said unscathed. Upon seeing this, the soldiers of the Star Slasher tribe widened their eyes. Chapter 779. How can this be? This person took a strike from General Baleful Tiger and is completely fine. This is impossible. Yeah, how did he do it? There's actually such an expert in the Yenwu tribe? The people of the Star Slayer tribe were shocked. Hu Sha himself was in disbelief. Then he thought of something and looked at Atu's armor. This must be the legendary refining method. Unbelievable. He had figured everything out. The opponent was able to block his strike because of the protection of the armor. Also, the opponent's cultivation base was clearly lower than his, but they were evenly matched. It was most likely because of the spear in his hand. Hee, this is the sage's method. Atu patted the armor on his body and chuckled. In terms of cultivation base, he was inferior to Hu Sha. But in terms of equipment, even 10 Hu Sha couldn't compare to him. Let's see how many strikes you can take. Hu Sha snorted coldly and once again charged forward with his long blade. Clang, clang, cling. The sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly. The two of them fought until dust flew everywhere. Dao patterns weaved in the air and a powerful aura rippled outwards. Boom! A figure was sent flying while vomiting blood. It was Hu Sha. Just now, Atu didn't retreat or evade, forcefully taking a strike from him in exchange for an opening and heavily injuring him. Damn it, damn it. Hu Sha was enraged, the baleful chi on his body surged crazily. He was the #1 warrior of the Star Slayer tribe, the strongest person apart from Xianxia, yet he was suppressed by a guy who had just stepped into the Emperor realm not long ago. Moreover, it was in front of his army. Hu Sha, stand down. Xianxia, who was sitting on the chariot, said. Chief, I can still fight. Hu Sha said hatefully. I said stand down. Xianxia's tone became colder. Hu Sha's heart trembled, not daring to disobey. He looked at Atu unwillingly and returned to the army. Although he didn't want to admit it, he knew that if he continued to fight, he might not be able to gain the upper hand. Hee, Chief Xianxia, your tribe's #1 warrior has been defeated. But do you want to come down personally? Atu pointed his spear at Xianxia and said arrogantly. Defeating Hu Sha gave him a lot of confidence. Ignorant ant, you're courting death. Xianxia said indifferently. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and a majestic force instantly gushed out like a tsunami. The strength of this force caused Atu's pupils to constrict. He couldn't block it. He absolutely could not block this power. Even the armor he was wearing didn't give him the slightest sense of security. Was this the power of the strongest tribe leader? It was too terrifying. They weren't even on the same level. I will die. Atu's pupils trembled and he was unable to move. He could only watch as the force was about to land on him. Just when he thought he was going to die, a gentle breeze suddenly blew past him. Miraculously, that overwhelming force actually dissipated completely in front of this gentle breeze. Atu heaved a sigh of relief. His body went limp and he almost collapsed. But at this moment, a hand was placed on his shoulder from behind, supporting him. A cold voice sounded, everyone is watching. If you fall like this, it will be very embarrassing. Xianxia sage. Atu turned around and saw Chu Kuangren's calm face. An unprecedented sense of security suddenly surged into his heart. He knew that Chu Kuangren must have saved him just now. All right, leave this to me. You can go back first. Chu Kuangren said. Xianxia sage, you must be careful. All right. Atu turned around and returned to the Yenwu tribe. Now, Chu Kuangren was the only one left to face the million-strong army. Compared to them, he was too insignificant. To be able to block my attack, Xianxia sage lives up to his name. Xianxia said as he sat on the chariot. Then he said, I've seen the weapon crafting technique that you've invented. To think that it could allow an ordinary emperor to defeat the strongest warrior under my command. It's indeed an impressive technique. Thank you for the compliment. It's a pity that you're an enemy of the gods, so I can't use you. That's why you can't continue to live. But don't worry, I'll make good use of the alchemy and weapon crafting techniques that you've taught me. Heh, you don't have to worry about that. What's wrong? Does Xianxia sage really think that he can block my million-strong elite army? Xianxia said. The army behind him seemed to be responding to his words as they roared. Kill, kill, kill. In an instant, the battle cries reverberated through the clouds and shook the earth. Chu Kuangren chuckled. How would I know if I don't try? He took a step forward. In an instant, an extremely terrifying murderous chi roared out and messed up the clouds. The million-strong army felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren with fear in their eyes. It was as if they could see countless vengeful spirits and evil spirits on this man's body, which had turned into a scene of Azura purgatory. They had never seen such a murderous chi before. Even if they combined the murderous chi of their millions of people, they would not be able to match up to a tenth of his opponents. It was too terrifying. Just how many people had this man killed? They felt that if there was a god of massacre in this world, then this man before them was definitely worthy of it. You're all too naive to compete with me in terms of murderous chi, Chu Kuangren said calmly. He looked at the million-strong army before him without a trace of emotion in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at millions of weeds. He had killed too many living beings in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Too many to count. Although it was not something to boast about, he dared to say that no one in the firmament star could compare to him in terms of killing. On the battlefield, only the sound of the wind could be heard. The million-strong army was silent as they were suppressed by a single person's murderous chi. One of the soldiers could no longer withstand the terrifying murderous chi and fainted on the spot. Then the soldiers fell one after another. Even the cultivators could not withstand it. In the end, the only ones who could withstand it were those who were mentally tough and had at least reached the sage realm. As for the others, they had long fallen to the ground. Chu Kuangren stood there without doing anything. All he did was release his murderous chi, and it was enough to defeat the million-strong army. The Yanwu tribe members behind him were dumbfounded. Is this Xianxia sage's power? It's too powerful. What a terrifying murderous chi. Did Xianxia sage kill every living being in the firmament star? Otherwise, where did he get this murderous chi from? How is this possible? This must be some kind of power. Just like alchemy, Xianxia sage always surprises us. As the crowd discussed, they looked at the white figure that was not tall but was unusually majestic. Their admiration for him was obvious. Wind Valley, Yanwu tribe, and the others looked at each other. Initially, they were worried that Chu Kuangren would use some method to deal with the Star Slayer tribe. But now, there was only one thought in their minds. This battle was over. Chapter 780. What kind of person is he? Xianxia stared at Chu Kuangren with a never-before-seen look of seriousness in his eyes. He clearly did not have any cultivation base, yet his frail body could unleash a murderous aura that could intimidate millions of people. Despite being called a sage, he still had such a murderous aura around him. Allow me to face you in person, Xianxia said as he slowly stood up with the golden greatsword in his hand. A majestic surge of Emperor's chi instantly erupted. Wuxia and the others looked at him with hope in their eyes. Our leader is about to make his move. That's great. I think only our leader can suppress this person. They had full confidence in Xianxia. Seeing that Xianxia was about to make his move, the people from the Flame Warrior tribe looked grim too. The son of human god is finally going to make his move. Xianxia was a legendary name among the humans. Not even the celestial tribe dared to underestimate him. He was the only child born from the union of a human and a celestial in countless years. He was blessed with both divine power and chi refinement. Chu Kuangren looked at him with interest. Let this battle decide who among us is qualified to be the leader of the human tribe. Xianxia yelled and attacked with his sword. With a single slash, a majestic golden sword chi surged. At the same time, Taoist patterns spread from his body and combined with the Emperor's chi to form a small world that enveloped Chu Kuangren within. An invisible force of suppression erupted. I don't think anyone below the level of a Taoist master can withstand this attack, Chu Kuangren said as his mind power circulated. When the majestic palm chi reached him, it automatically dissipated. It did not even lift the hem of his shirt. Wuxia and the others could not help but widen their eyes in shock. How is this mind power possible? Xianxia could not help but be shocked. It was no secret that Chu Kuangren was a member of the Transcendent Tribe. However, the problem was that Xianxia had met the leader of the Transcendent Tribe before, and the leader's mind power was nothing compared to his. Hence, he did not take Chu Kuangren seriously at first. However, the mind power that Chu Kuangren displayed now was many times stronger than the leader of the Transcendent Tribe. They were not on the same level. Your chi refinement level is considered not bad in this era, but it's a shame that it's still too weak. Chu Kuangren shook his head and said. Then he said, show me your divine power too. Let me see the true power of the Son of God. Xianxia felt an invisible pressure enveloping him. This kind of oppressive feeling, Vajra divine power. With a cold shout, Xianxia's body emitted a golden radiance. Boundless divine might spread out from his body. Divine power, Emperor. The two types of energy fused on Xianxia's body, turning into a peerlessly tyrannical energy. Its might was so strong that it shook everything within millions of miles. The entire earth was shaking violently. Even the void was blasted apart. The leader is getting serious. This is power comparable to a sovereign's. Wuxia and the others stared at Xianxia's back with bright eyes. In all these years, they had rarely seen Xianxia use his divine power. He was almost invincible in chi refinement alone. Meanwhile, the power that erupted from the combination of divine power and chi refinement was comparable to a sovereign. No one in the entire human race could compare to him. Song, you're the first person in all these years that forced me to use my full power. To show my respect, I'll use my strongest attack. Are you ready? Xianxia said in a low voice. Come, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Xianxia slowly raised the golden greatsword in his hand. A gust of wind blew. The wind was mixed with golden chi that tore the earth apart. The wind grew stronger and stronger. The golden chi became denser and denser. Gradually, a golden tornado formed around Xianxia, and its terrifying might tore the void apart. Vajra tempest slash. Xianxia's eyes lit up. With a slash of his sword, a golden tornado swept out majestically. Everyone watching the storm grew shocked. The power behind this attack was already comparable to that of a overgod. Across all of firmament, there were practically not many cultivators who could survive this attack. Is that all you've got? Chu Kuangren chuckled. He slowly lifted his finger and gently tapped the void. In an instant, countless Taoist patterns spread out from his fingertips. His mind power surged as well. His mind power and Taoist patterns combined to form a lesser realm, which Xianxia's lesser realm was instantly shattered. The moment the golden tornado was enveloped by the lesser realm, it calmed down and eventually turned into a gentle breeze that blew past Chu Kuangren. Xianxia was dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded too. That's it? That's his strongest attack? Impossible, this is impossible. Xianxia started to doubt his life. Ever since he was born, his power had always been smooth sailing and he had never encountered any setbacks. How could this be? His strongest attack had actually been neutralized by the other party with just a wave of his hand. How was this possible? No, I don't believe it. Xianxia's mind exploded. He charged towards Chu Kuangren with the golden greatsword in his hand and slashed at his head. However, his sword was blocked by an invisible barrier when it got close to Chu Kuangren. It stopped in midair. Ripples spread out in the void. The combination of divine power and chi refinement can indeed increase your strength by a lot, but that's all it can do. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He slowly pointed a finger, and a strong psychic wave gathered at the tip of his finger. Then he gently touched the golden sword. Crack, crack, a crisp sound was heard. Cracks appeared on the wind-cutter greatsword, which was rumored to have been bestowed by the gods. Finally, with a snap, it shattered into pieces. The mind power continued to spread and hit Xianxia's body. The golden armor on his body could not escape the fate of being destroyed as well. It exploded and Xianxia was sent flying as he spat out a mouthful of blood and crashed into a mountain in the distance, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. He lay in the crater with his armor broken and only a few pieces of rags were left on his body. His hair was messy and messy. "This is impossible, this is impossible," Xianxia kept mumbling to himself. He could not believe what had just happened. Not only him, but everyone else was the same as well. Xianxia was a legendary name. Almost no one in the human race could match up to him. However, in front of Chu Kuangren, he could not resist at all. "Song Xian, this is too powerful. Can the mind power really be this powerful?" Yenwu, Fenrir, and the other strong cultivators who were secretly observing all stared at Chu Kuangren's back with their mouths agape. The Yenwu tribe's army, on the other hand, was extremely excited. They were chanting Chu Kuangren's name with fanatical faith in their eyes. Chu Kuangren patted his cloak and smoothed out his hair. He then looked up at the sky without saying anything. With a surge of his mind power, a violent gust of wind with thousands of mysterious Taoist patterns swept out and shattered the clouds. In an instant, a divine light flashed within the clouds. Chapter 781. Divine light flickered in the clouds. A golden figure appeared, exuding boundless divine might. When everyone saw that figure, their faces changed. Even the cultivators of the reverse god pavilion who were secretly observing couldn't help but look serious. A god, and a sovereign at that. One of the 33 chief gods, the Vajra chief god. As expected, even the gods are paying attention to this battle. They've even sent out master gods. How surprising. How is Sage Tsang going to deal with this? Master gods were the most powerful existences in this world. For countless years, master gods had ruled over the world, and no one had ever dared to defy them. In the distance, on the godly mountain, the overgods were also paying close attention to Chu Kuangren. There was a light screen in front of them, and it showed the scene of Chu Kuangren facing off against the Vajra master deity. "Do you guys think that Tsang can handle the Vajra master god?" The flame master god said indifferently. "No one can resist the power of a lord god, let alone a human. The Yenwu tribe is destined to perish today." "That's right, the dignity of a god cannot be challenged. It's just that I didn't expect this Tsang to be able to defeat Xianxia. In the end, he's just a bastard." The sovereigns were all discussing amongst themselves. Very few master gods believed that Tsang was a match for the Vajra master god. Within the Yenwu tribe, the Vajra master deity stared at Chu Kuangren with a cold, murderous intent on his stern face. "No one can challenge the godly aura and continue living, and you're no exception. Human Tsang, are you ready to die? Sovereign, don't waste words. Make your move." The Vajra overlord gently shook the golden spear in his hand, and the potency of the divine weapon erupted. A ray of golden chi surged towards Chu Kuangren. Just this strike alone was already not weaker than Xianxia's full-powered strike from before. Everywhere the strength chi passed, the space would shatter inch by inch. Chu Kuangren gently tapped his finger. The golden energy burst like a bubble in an instant. When the Vajra master god saw this, his expression froze. Sure enough, the person in front of him was using telekinesis. However, this was the first time he had seen such strong telekinesis. This person was a strong enemy. The Vajra master god retracted his contempt. Vajra divine power, heart-shattering spear. The Vajra overlord took a step forward and arrived in front of Chu Kuangren. The spear in his hand stabbed out as his divine power and Taoist patterns merged together. That spear was aimed directly at Chu Kuangren's heart. Even a lord-level existence would die from that attack. World luck. The psyche power combined with the small world and turned into a chain. Just as the spear was about to hit Chu Kuangren's back, it bound the golden spear so that it could not get any closer. Small world energy. He's not a chi refinement cultivator, yet he's able to use chi refinement techniques. There are way too many secrets on this person. the Vajra chief god thought to himself. But she didn't give him a chance to think too much. Chu Kuangren's mind power had already transformed into an invisible giant hand that blasted outwards. Even a lord like Chu Kuangren was sent flying by the terrifying force. Bang, bang, bang. The chief god was sent flying, smashing through one mountain range after another like a cannonball. The sight of it made everyone's hearts palpitate. Azure was actually a match for the main gods. In the mountain range, the Vajra chief god's expression was grim. A crack had appeared on the golden armor on his body. Although it was very slight, that armor was a divine weapon that was born together with him. For countless years, no one had ever been able to break it. Chu Kuangren was the first. What a human anomaly! If I don't kill you today, you'll become a huge problem in the future. The murderous intent in the Vajra chief god's eyes almost solidified. He raised his hand to recall his golden spear. However, that spear was now tightly bound by the world lock. No matter how hard he tried, he could not summon it back. D****. He stomped his feet, and the ground almost exploded. In an instant, he shot towards Chu Kuangren like a cannonball. Golden divine power surged around his body, and he emanated an indestructible aura. 10,000 deity calamity fire lotus. Faced with another attack from the Vajra chief god, Chu Kuangren moved. His mind power surged out like a tidal wave. Over the past few days, he had completely mastered the telekinesis cultivation method that he had obtained from the divine sense tribe. With his talent, he had combined it with his ultimate Tao and created a brand new mystery. He named it Rise with a Thought. With a thought. Suddenly, an endless stream of flames emerged from the heavens and earth and converged towards Chu Kuangren, forming into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus flew towards the Vajra chief god. The Vajra master god and the fire lotus collided with a loud boom. That tiny fire lotus burst forth with an unimaginable amount of power, sending the Vajra master god flying once more. Not only that, but the golden red flames wrapped around his body, causing the divine power in his body to start burning away. Impossible! These flames are burning my divine power. Myriad deity tribulation fire? Is this specially used to deal with gods? Scatter! The Vajra master god was extremely shocked as he let out a loud roar and dispersed the god power that was attached to his body. Even though he had expended some of his god power, it had also prevented the flames from burning the rest of the god power within his body. With a single thought, 10,000 blades create a disaster of soldiers. Chu Kuangren's calm voice rang out again. His mind power circulated. The spiritual qi between the heavens and earth began to converge. Swords, sabers, weapons, spears, axes, and so on began to materialize from the spiritual qi. The densely packed weapons covered the entire sky. Wherever the weapons pointed, even the master gods could not help but tremble violently. Go! Chu Kuangren said softly. Thousands of spiritual soldiers rushed towards the Vajra master god as if they had been summoned. Adamantine armor, protect me! The Vajra master god roared as countless Taoist patterns appeared on his golden armor. His divine power gushed out and formed a golden light barrier. The countless weapons collided with the barrier, causing loud explosions. How powerful! I can't believe a human possesses such power. The Vajra master god frantically channeled the divine power within his body and increased the power of his divine companion weapon to its limit to defend against the countless weapons. However, he still felt an unprecedented pressure. This pressure reminded him of a certain existence. For countless years, he had only felt a similar pressure from that existence. Master God. Could this human be a match for the Master God? A ridiculous thought popped up in the Vajra Master God's mind. No, that was impossible. How could the lowly human race be mentioned in the same breath as the God King? The Vajra Master God roared in denial of that thought. Crack, crack. At that moment, the golden light barrier began to crack. Cracks began to spread. More and more cracks appeared, and finally, with a loud boom, the golden light barrier shattered. The spiritual weapons also smashed onto the Vajra Master God one after another, and the surrounding ground was also affected by the impact, causing dust to billow everywhere. When the spiritual weapons and the dust settled, the crowd saw a battered and bloodied figure lying in a crater. The golden armor on his body was already broken into dozens of pieces. Everyone felt like they were in a dream when they saw the scene before them. The Overgod has been defeated. Xianxia has won. We've won. We've won. We've won against the Overgod. Chapter 782. For countless years, the deities had always been high and mighty, especially the Overgods. The way everyone saw it, the chief gods were invincible. They had the terrifying power to destroy the world with just a lift of their hand. Although the human race had invented cultivation methods, after so many years of development, even the strongest cultivator was extremely weak in the face of a chief god. However, now, Chu Kuangren had defeated a Overgod right in front of them. Moreover, he was unscathed too. This made the humans extremely excited. It turned out that the deities were not invincible. It turned out that humans could defeat the deities too. We can win. The human race will rise again. We won't be a captive of the deities. We must. As long as we're led by Tsang Sage, we can win. Yenwu, Fenrir, and the others were extremely excited. In the godly mountain, the overgods who were watching the battle could not sit still anymore. I can't believe this Tsang is so powerful. The overgods are no match for him? They were extremely shocked. They felt like their supreme status had been challenged. No, we can't let Tsang live. We must kill him. Everyone, I believe you've all seen this clearly. This Tsang is only strong in his mind power. He's not an immortal like we thought. As long as he's not an immortal, his mind power will have its limits. I don't believe we can't kill him with a few more overgods. That's right. The overgod's eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. Chu Kuangren's existence had shaken their status. They could not sit back and watch as Chu Kuangren led the human race to greater heights. Yenwu tribe. Chu Kuangren had just defeated the Vajra overgod. His aura was very stable, and it seemed like he did not expend much energy. Mind power originated from the soul, and with his current soul power, it was not too difficult to defeat a overgod. Cough cough. You're dead meat. In the crater, the Vajra overgod slowly climbed up and coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He glared at Chu Kuangren with intense hatred. As a overgod, this was the first time he was in such a sorry state. Oh, you're not dead yet? It seems like your divine physique is quite strong. No wonder you're called the Vajra overgod. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Tsang, you don't know the true strength of a deity. Even if you kill me, I won't die. After a few thousand years, I'll be reborn in the godly mountain. This is the true strength of a sovereign. The Vajra master deity sneered. Chu Kuangren was not surprised to hear that. He had seen these things in the records of the later generations. That was why people chose to seal the gods instead of killing them. It doesn't matter. You guys can resurrect whenever you want, but I'll always be your nightmare. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. He gently raised his hand. Thousands of weapons converged once again. But at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and terrifying waves of divine power erupted from afar. Furthermore, every single one of them was on par with the Vajra chief god. Tsang, you're too naive. Do you think I'm the only god in the Protoss? Do you think that the main gods will just sit back and watch after you display power comparable to a main god? You might be able to defeat me, but can you defeat the combined forces of the main gods? The Vajra master god roared with laughter as a smug look appeared in his eyes. Chu Kuangren then stepped on his head. You're very noisy. Bang! Boundless psyche power erupted, and the Vajra chief god's already severely injured head exploded on the spot. A chief god had fallen. A golden prismatic crystal fell out. That was the chief god's godhead. Chu Kuangren picked it up and tossed it into his yin and yang ring. After he killed the Vajra chief god, a terrifying chill suddenly erupted between the heavens and the earth, freezing everything within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. The frigid wind swept towards the Yenwu tribe. If this frigid wind were to land in the Yenwu tribe, countless people would die. At this critical moment, Chu Kuangren released his mini-realm and enveloped the entire Yanwu tribe within it. Under the protection of the mini-realm, everyone was spared from the disaster. Boom, boom. The ground shook, thunder rumbled, storms raged, floods surged, and all sorts of natural disasters accompanied by powerful divine power fluctuations appeared one after another. The Yanwu tribe looked exceptionally small in the face of these forces. They all knew that without the protection of Chu Kuangren's mini-realm, any one of these forces would be enough to destroy them. Such terrifying divine power fluctuations, and they're all different. They're all main gods. How many main gods are here? With such a lineup, are the deities going to wipe out the entire human race? Not really. The deities still need to harvest faith energy from the human race, so they won't wipe out the entire human race. I'm afraid these main gods are here to deal with Tsang Sage. With so many main gods, even Tsang Sage won't be able to deal with them. It's not easy for the human race to have a sage who can rival the main gods. Is he going to fall just like that? D*Eminent. The continuous heavenly disasters shook the minds of everyone present. In the face of such power, even an Empyrean was very insignificant. They knew that these forces were all here for one person. Chu Kuangren stood between the heavens and the earth. His not-so-tall body was unusually tall in the face of these horrifying natural disasters. His expression was very calm. It was as if he would not budge even if the sky fell and the earth collapsed. Amidst the snowstorm, the first main god arrived. It was a man in a white robe with a cold expression. This person was also the Frost Master God who planted the frost mark on Tsang Sage back then. Behind him, a blue-robed figure walked out from the dark clouds. His body was surrounded by bluish-purple lightning, making him look extremely domineering. It was the Lightning Master God. The raging winds gathered and turned into a woman. It was the Tempest Master God. The flames between the heavens and earth converged and formed into a burly man with a head full of red hair. This person was the Flame Master God. A dazzling white light bloomed in the sky, and on the other side of the white light was an extremely dense darkness. The two stood opposite each other. The Light Master God and the Darkness Master God also walked out. Amidst the quaking ground, a stone pillar suddenly protruded, and on top of that stone pillar stood a majestic figure. It was the Great Master God. Buzz buzz, the void trembled, and a black gate appeared. The gate opened, and a figure in a black robe walked out, surrounded by countless vengeful spirits. This was the Lord of the Underworld. These are all familiar faces. Chu Kuangren chuckled. In the future, he had crossed paths with the myriad deity sect before. Those disciples could activate the power of the deities, so they had created various divine projections of the deities. He had seen every deity here before. This was especially true for the Lord of the Underworld, the Light Master God, and the Darkness Master God. He had met these guys a few times already. Ice Master God, Flame Master God, Tempest Master God. Oh my God! 8 Master Gods. To think that 8 Master Gods have come. My God, this is too scary. Compared to Chu Kuangren's calmness, the cultivators who were watching the battle could not help but gasp. One main god was enough to make people despair. Yet now, 8 main gods had suddenly appeared. It's over. It's really over now. No matter how strong Tsang Sage is, he won't be a match for 8 main gods. The heavens want to end the human race's luck. Chapter 783. The 8 overgods hovered in the air as all sorts of natural disasters circled around them, crazily attacking Chu Kuangren's lesser realm. Everyone thought that Chu Kuangren could not hold on any longer. How was he supposed to fight against 8 overgods? However, the strong cultivators who were secretly observing could not help but gulp as they stared at Chu Kuangren. They were more shocked than the 8 overgods. Tsang can still stabilize his lesser realm under the attack of 8 overgods' divine powers. Isn't his lesser realm a little too sturdy? Could it be that even 8 overgods can't suppress him? The strong cultivators who were secretly observing were all shocked. Meanwhile, the 8 overgods looked at Chu Kuangren with a solemn expression. For a human to be able to force 8 overgods to join forces against him, Song, you're truly a legend. The flame overgod said to Tsong. Why waste your breath on him? Let's do it. The frost overgod raised his hand and unleashed his divine power, turning it into a frost chi that froze everything in its path. Let's see who's stronger if we're competing in frost chi. Chu Kuangren chuckled. A surge of frost chi that was no weaker than the frost overgods erupted. With a single thought, 10,000 rivers of frost and snow shall freeze. The frost chi erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. Wherever it went, the void, sand, grass, and even space were all frozen. When the two surges of frost chi collided, it instantly turned the entire place into a world of ice and snow. The surge of frost chi overpowered the frost overgod. A surge of frost chi landed on the frost overgod, causing his entire body to shiver. His face instantly turned pale as if his blood and soul were about to be frozen. He looked at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. How can this be? How can your frost chi be so strong? Freezing with frost. And the one who froze was him, the frost overgod. It was unbelievable, but the truth was right before their eyes. Although they were shocked, they had no choice but to believe it. You used the frost mark to torture me for years. What's wrong? Can't you take this bit of frost chi? Chu Kuangren chuckled. He lifted his palm gently, and his mind power erupted once again. The terrifying frost chi turned into a white flood dragon that charged towards the frost overgod. At that moment, a bolt of lightning exploded. The lightning master god came before the ice master god as a thick purplish-blue thunderbolt blasted apart the frosty aura. Even though his strength was much stronger than the ice master gods, he could not help but let out a solemn expression in the face of this chilling aura. Everyone, don't just stand there, make your move. The lightning master god said coldly. The other sovereigns instantly attacked as well. Then, all sorts of divine powers such as the winds, the earth, the darkness, and the light erupted and charged towards Chu Kuangren from all directions. Faced with such power, even a Dao Lord would be instantly killed. Chu Kuangren channeled his mind power to its maximum. The invisible psychokinesis force caused the void around him to distort. With a single thought, all techniques returned to the void. Chu Kuangren let out a soft grunt, and several vortexes appeared around him. Within these vortexes, a large number of Taoist patterns were circulating and intertwining. All of the divine power attacks that entered these vortexes were disintegrated one after another. Rising with a single thought was a mystery that Chu Kuangren had come up with after researching the mind power cultivation technique. It was also an interpretation of his path of self-improvement and invincibility. At this stage, it was divided into 4 moves. 10,000 deities tribulation fire lotus, 10,000 swords creating calamity of weapons, 10,000 rivers misty snow. These 3 techniques were all offensive techniques. Meanwhile, the 4th technique, all techniques return to the void, was a defensive technique. This technique was somewhat similar to the invincible heavenly vortex technique. The only difference was that it did not have a rebounding ability, but its defensive power was much stronger. Countless divine powers were disintegrated one after another when they entered the vortexes that Chu Kuangren had created. They could not hurt him at all. Compared to the deities, his body was extremely fragile. Everyone knew that if they could land a hit on Chu Kuangren, he would definitely die on the spot with his fragile physical body. However, they could not do it. What a powerful defensive technique. The underworld god's expression turned grim. Then he channeled his divine power and chanted a strange syllable. It was the underworld god's sole divine ability, the underworld god's language. The power of the underworld god's language charged towards Chu Kuangren, directly attacking his soul through his physical body. This attack was so terrifying that it was impossible to defend against it. In the future, Chu Kuangren had experienced this technique twice, but the power of those 2 times was far inferior to the one he was facing now. This time, it was the underworld god's full power. If I didn't come to this era, this underworld god's language might have some effect on me. But now, it's useless. Chu Kuangren stood his ground and allowed the underworld god's language to attack him. Before he came to this era, His soul energy was already extremely powerful because he cultivated the Lotus Sutra. It was no weaker than a Dailord's. After he came to this world, he had consumed 99 soul fruits. In addition to that, he had also cultivated the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. Hence, his soul strength was probably no weaker than a Dailord's. The underworld god's language's attack was completely useless against him. The underworld god noticed this too. He looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. The underworld god's language is useless against him. How can his soul be so powerful? He channeled his divine power again. Suddenly, a black door appeared in the void. Once the door opened, countless Shura evil spirits immediately rushed out, howling. It was another divine ability of the underworld god, the door of the underworld. Heh, it's this stupid door again. Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a single thought, spiritual qi gathered and formed into thousands of weapons. Countless blades swept out like a storm. Everywhere they passed, the Azura evil spirits were completely annihilated. Then, the thousands of weapons landed on the black door. The entire door was blasted into smithereens by the weapons. With the door of the underworld destroyed, the underworld god's face instantly turned pale. It was obvious that he had suffered some backlash. Raging flame dragon howl. The flame master god made his move. Golden flames burned around his body and transformed into a ferocious fire dragon. The surrounding air felt like it was being set on fire. The fire dragon roared with an earth-shattering aura. Chu Kuangren stood on the spot. With a single thought, the spiritual qi between heaven and earth gathered towards him. Taoist patterns intertwined and formed a golden-red fire lotus. Fighting fire with fire, the golden-red fire lotus landed on the fire dragon. The two flames formed by divine power and mind power clashed with each other. The void was distorted by the extreme heat. In the end, the two flames exploded at the same time. The waves of fire that swept out collided with the flame master god's body. The mighty flame master god let out a scream from the heat and was pushed back a few hundred meters. A hole was burned through his clothes, revealing a large piece of burnt skin. The frost master god was injured by the chilling qi, and the flame master god was burned by the flames. Everyone was in disbelief. The earth master god and the windstorm master god followed suit. However, they could not hurt Chu Kuangren either. Instead, they were injured and pushed back by his powerful mind power. Chu Kuangren had single-handedly suppressed the 8 great overgods. Everyone was dazzled by the elegant demeanor he displayed in his every move. At that moment, the humans seemed to have seen a ray of light. A ray of hope that pierced through the dark night and spanned the ages. There's hope for the humans. In Wind Valley, Yen Wu and the others were overwhelmed with emotions. New. Chapter 784. Chu Kuangren overpowered the 8 overgods. His unparalleled strength shook the entire firmament and land. As the 8 overgods sustained injuries one after another, the other overgods who were watching the battle from afar could no longer sit still. Initially, they thought that the 8 overgods would be more than enough to deal with Chu Kuangren. However, it seemed like they had made the wrong judgment. Chu Kuangren's combat strength was ridiculously strong. We must join in as well. That's right. If this goes on, we might not even be able to kill this person. Our celestial tribe's reputation will be tarnished. If the 8 overgods can't even take down a single human, how are we going to build our reputation in the human race? Rays of light flew out of the godly mountain. In the Yenwu tribe, Chu Kuangren was very proficient in using his mind power. With all kinds of mind power cultivation techniques and his own invincible techniques, he almost single-handedly suppressed the 8 overgods. Countless humans were overwhelmed by the sight of it. At that moment, another powerful surge of divine power came from afar. 12 rays of light had arrived. It's the oceanic deity, the wood deity, the demonic deity, another 12 chief gods. Oh my god, all these chief gods have appeared together just to deal with a single human. This is way too extravagant, isn't it? TSK, this kind of thing has never happened before. Initially, everyone thought that it was just a battle between the Star Slayer tribe and the Yenwu tribe, but things had progressed far beyond their expectations. This was clearly a battle between the Celestial tribe and the human race. If Chu Kuangren could win this battle, his reputation in the human race would rise to an unprecedented level. Not only that, but the human race would also realize through this battle that the Celestial tribe was not omnipotent and that they could still fail. This would also plant a seed for overthrowing the rule of the Celestial tribe. On the other hand, if Chu Kuangren died, the human race would not be able to recover. At that thought, everyone, including the ferocious beasts in the firmament and land, paid close attention to this battle. The Celestial tribe has ruled this land for so many years. It's time to make some changes. Perhaps this Tsang is the key. Tsang, he's a rare talent. I can't believe there's such an anomaly in the human race. Could this human be the next ruler of Firmament Star? Countless strong cultivators in the firmament and land had different thoughts. Outside the Yenwu tribe, following the arrival of the 12 overgods, a terrifying surge of divine power swept towards Chu Kuangren with a majestic aura. 12 plus 8 meant 20 sovereigns. In addition to the slain Vajra master deity, more than half of the master deities in the Celestial tribe had been mobilized to deal with Chu Kuangren. Are there any more? Do you want me to give you some time to gather all the sovereigns? Chu Kuangren tugged at the cloak on his body and smiled. Against the 20 most powerful overgods in the world, he behaved extremely casually. He did not feel nervous at all. Hearing his words, the expressions of the gods became extremely ugly. Ever since I was born, this is the first time I've met a heretic like you. If you don't die, my god race won't be able to rest easy. That's right. The human tribe is only fit to be controlled by the gods. Obey and respect the gods. This is the only way for you to survive in this world. The human tribe doesn't need a heretic like you. You must die. The human tribe was born to provide labor and faith to the Celestial tribe. Resistance will only result in destruction. Every overgod stared at Chu Kuangren with a murderous intent that almost solidified in their eyes. The atmosphere between the heavens and the earth became extremely tense. The 20 overgods channeled their divine powers and were ready to strike. The vast ripples of divine power shook the entire ground. Countless living beings on the ground prostrated themselves on the ground, shivering in fear. The only way for us to survive? What a joke! The human tribe was born free. We have our own way of survival. It's not up to you gods to tell us what to do. Chu Kuangren said loudly. With the help of his mind power, his voice spread across the entire world, inspiring countless humans. This is your destiny. The underworld god said coldly. Destiny? I'll show you what destiny is. An incredibly powerful and domineering aura suddenly erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. Countless Taoist patterns spread out with him as the center, causing the entire firmament star to tremble. Accompanied by a deafening explosion in the sky, all living beings instinctively felt an indescribable sense of fear. This energy, all the overgods at the scene could not help but narrow their eyes. They could clearly feel the godheads within their bodies trembling slightly. It was as if they were afraid of something. The power of the heavenly Tao. This is the power of the heavenly Tao. The underworld god exclaimed in disbelief. The other overgods were also so scared that their faces turned pale. They trembled as they looked at Chu Kuangren, who had unleashed the power of the heavenly Tao. The power of the heavenly Tao? Why does he have the power of the heavenly Tao? What's going on? The overgods were dumbfounded. The heavenly Tao was the power that maintained the order of the firmament star. It was the collective consciousness of the firmament star and the billions of living beings. Although the gods were born from the innate Taoism, they too would be suppressed by the power of the heavenly Tao. In fact, they were even more suppressed than the other living beings. That was because the heavenly Tao did not like them who were born from the innate Taoism. They lived under the heavenly Tao but were not under its control. You're talking about destiny? Then let's see who's destined. Chu Kuangren said calmly. In his unification Tao state, The combination of the power of the heavenly Tao, his mind power, and his ultimate Taoism was terrifying. With a thought, the 10,000 deities calamity fire lotus. He pointed a finger. The flames of heaven and earth converged and turned into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus flew towards the underworld god. Not good. The underworld god channeled his divine power and attacked. A black divine power surged and landed on the fire lotus, but it was easily burned into nothingness. The fire lotus landed on the underworld god's body like a hot knife through butter. With a scream, the underworld god was burned into a piece of charcoal. Retreat! Quickly! One of the overgods yelled. With a thought, 10,000 rivers of snow and ice. A chilly wind descended from the sky with frost and snow. The boundless chill spread out with Chu Kuangren at the center. This chill was too piercingly cold. The overgods wanted to retreat, but they felt as if their bodies were frozen, and their movements became sluggish. With a thought, 10,000 blades of war. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Spiritual chi gathered and thousands of blades swept in all directions. The flame overgod, frost overgod, tempest overgod, and earth overgod who were closest to Chu Kuangren were instantly killed by the countless blades. How can it be so terrifying? The overgods were so scared that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to follow up with another attack, ripples appeared in the void, and mysterious Taoist patterns appeared one after another. These Taoist patterns made Chu Kuangren's mini-world freeze for a moment. This power, Chu Kuangren squinted. Let's go! An indifferent voice rang out. The other sovereigns, upon hearing this, hurriedly left. Chu Kuangren did not chase after them. Instead, he looked at a mountain not far away and saw a man in a silver-white robe standing there. That man was also a overgod. Chu Kuangren was very familiar with the energy waves that emanated from his body. It was one of the space-time techniques that he specialized in. Overgod of space, Chu Kuangren read out his name with a playful look in his eyes. Chapter 785. Xiao AI, Analyze the Space-Time Overgod. Chu Kuangren muttered in his mind, and all sorts of information about the space-time overgod appeared in his mind. Master, I have good news. The omniscient spirit Xiao AI suddenly said. Oh, tell me about it. According to the analysis, the space-time overgod's godhead contains powerful space-time energy. If we use his godhead to activate the river of time, we can succeed even without the Taoist master's energy, Xiao AI said slowly. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up when he heard that. That's a pleasant surprise. Chu Kuangren looked at the space-time overgod with a playful gaze. The space-time overgod shuddered inexplicably. He suddenly felt like he was a rabbit being targeted by a hunter, and an inexplicable sense of danger welled up in his heart. He quickly suppressed this strange feeling. Song, your war with the Celestials has just begun. I won't let this go so easily, the space-time overgod said. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. His technique was quite similar to Chu Kuangren's spatial conveyor technique. Running away after saying those words. Interesting. He had no intention of giving chase. He had indeed won this battle, but he had expended a lot of his mind power as well. He might not be able to take it if he continued to fight. Of course, the Celestials might know this too, but they did not dare to continue fighting because they did not know how many more overgods Chu Kuangren could kill before his mind power ran out. Chu Kuangren deactivated his Taoist unification mode. He picked up all the godhoods on the ground. Back at the tribe, Yenwu, Fenrir, Qingyi, and the others walked up to Chu Kuangren. They looked at him with fanatical respect. Xianxia, you're amazing. Yeah, you managed to chase away so many overgods. You're the only one with such strength since the birth of the human race. Not bad, you're too powerful. Chu Kuangren smiled at the crowd's admiration. As long as you guys work hard, you'll be like me one day. Really? Xianxia, don't lie to us. That's right. We humans are born weak. Even the cubs of those ferocious beasts are countless times stronger than us when they are born. Can we really become as powerful as you, sage? Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren with hope in their eyes. When Chu Kuangren heard that, he replied solemnly, "You're right. We humans are indeed born weak, but it's precisely because we're weak that we're born with nothing. That's why we have everything we have, and why we have unlimited potential for growth. I am very gratified, because you all know that you are very weak, and admitting that you are weak is precisely the prerequisite for us to become strong. We are weak, but we were born to defeat the strong. Gods aren't scary, and being weak isn't scary either. As long as we humans work together and are of one mind, we will eventually stand upright in the heavens and spread the glory of the human race to the earth." Chu Kuangren gave his speech. After witnessing the scene of him killing a deity, no one doubted his words anymore. In addition to that, he secretly used the ethereal 7 emotions song to stir up everyone's emotions. At that moment, everyone's faces were flushed with excitement and longing. Chu Kuangren's words had planted a strong seed in their hearts. All that was left was to be watered in the future, and then it would sprout. "Spread the glory of the human race to the earth," Yenwu said loudly. "Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth." The morale of the entire Yenwu tribe was at an all-time high. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren. At that moment, their hearts were filled with an incomparably firm belief that they would follow him for the rest of their lives. Chu Kuangren looked at Yenwu and the others and secretly gave himself a thumbs up. It seemed like he had quite the talent for giving speeches. Chu Kuangren returned to his room. He took out the overgod godheads that he had killed this time. There were 6 in total. They were the godheads of the Vajra god, the windstorm god, the flame god, the frost god, the earth god, and the underworld god. The death of 6 overgods was a huge blow to the celestial race. Of course, the overgods would not really die. After a few thousand years, they would be reborn in the godly mountain. That was the most troublesome part. Chu Kuangren used Xiao AI to analyze the godheads in front of him. They all had their corresponding attributes, and the energy they contained was extremely huge. This is a soul attribute. Suddenly, Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he held the underworld god's godhead. The underworld god's godhead contained an extremely huge amount of soul energy, which would be a great help to his cultivation of the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. He kept the rest of the godheads. He then began to refine the underworld god's godhead. Although this body did not cultivate, he did not need a physical body to refine soul energy. All he needed was a powerful soul. In the current firmament star, who else could have a soul that was stronger than him? Time passed. It took Chu Kuangren almost a month to refine the underworld god's godhead. The soul flame that represented the earth's soul gradually grew stronger under the underworld god's godhead's energy, and finally, it completely condensed into the earth soul. Once the earth soul was formed, Chu Kuangren's soul energy skyrocketed. The earth soul has just been formed, and it's still a distance away from the full completion stage. If only I had another underworld god's godhead. Chu Kuangren's sky soul murmured. The underworld god is dead. I don't know how long it'll take for him to be born again, the earth soul said. There's no hurry. Besides the underworld god's godhead, there are many treasures in this world that can strengthen soul energy. The sky soul chuckled. The sky soul and earth soul returned to his physical body. Chu Kuangren stretched. Roulette, let's spin. Congratulations, host. You've drawn a legendary array master's inheritance. A legendary array master was not bad. He had already taught the humans about alchemy and equipment refining. Now that he was going to teach them about array formations, he wondered if they could learn it. Besides, he was also very proficient in runes. After some thought, Chu Kuangren decided to wait for a while. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. When he left the room, he habitually used his emperor's thought to scan the Yenwu tribe to see if anything had happened recently. With a glance, he found that there were some unfamiliar guests in the tribe. They were not humans, but wild beasts. Among them were Lust, Ox Demon, Ho, and other wild beasts. Chu Kuangren was curious. What were these wild beasts doing in the Yenwu tribe? He found Yenwu. After a short conversation, Chu Kuangren was very surprised. You're saying that they're here to form an alliance with us? Yes. Yenwu nodded. Not only the wild beasts, but some other tribes also want to form an alliance with us. Now that the Yenwu tribe had defeated the Star Slayer tribe, it had become the strongest tribe of the human tribe. Coupled with Chu Kuangren's powerful combat strength of killing overgods, it was only natural that many people wanted to curry favor with them. I'll leave this matter to you, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Unknowingly, his tone was already that of a superior. Yenwu did not feel uncomfortable at all. Although he was now the leader of the Yenwu tribe in name, Chu Kuangren had long been the real master of the tribe. He did not have any objections. After all, Chu Kuangren's achievements and strength were many times stronger than his. Yenwu was even considering when to give up his position. Chapter 786. Several months had passed since the battle between Chu Kuangren and the Overgod. In these few months, the Yenwu tribe had absorbed the Star Slayer tribe's army and formed alliances with the other tribes. The Yenwu tribe was now the strongest tribe of the human tribe. Under Chu Kuangren's guidance, they had improved tremendously in all aspects. On the other hand, the deities had not made any big moves recently. That battle had made them extremely fearful of Chu Kuangren. In a certain mountain range, Chu Kuangren held a supreme herb in his hand. There were Taoist patterns flowing on the supreme herb, and waves of brilliance flowed. This 7-star soul herb should be enough for me to upgrade my earth soul to the full success realm, Chu Kuangren murmured as he looked at the supreme herb in his hand. During this period, Chu Kuangren had been searching for opportunities of fortune to strengthen his soul energy. In the ancient world, the spiritual qi was abundant, so there were countless treasures and opportunities of fortune. With his current strength, there was basically nothing in this world that could threaten him. He had gained quite a lot. Now that his earth soul was almost at the full success realm, he believed that he would be able to condense the 4th human soul soon. After refining the supreme herb in his hand, Chu Kuangren's earth soul had reached the full success realm, and his soul energy was comparable to a heavenly soul. He felt that his mind power had reached a new height, and he could cover the entire world with a single thought. He could even see the scenery of the outer realm. Just as he was using his mind power to sense the entire world, he saw a stone wall with a huge finger mark on it. A familiar fluctuation spread out from the finger mark. This is the Immortal's Wall. Chu Kuangren recalled a scene he saw in the River of Time, where the Immortal left a finger mark on the stone wall. He was a little interested. He used the spatial conveyor technique and arrived in front of the stone wall. Because of the Immortal's Wall, this stone wall was also named the Immortal's Wall. At this moment, there were more than 10 cultivators in front of the Immortal's Wall, looking at the finger mark on it, trying to understand its mysteries. However, the Immortal's Wall was so mysterious that even a Taoist master would find it difficult to understand it. Not to mention that the people here were just ordinary emperors and heavenly honorables. It was even more difficult for them to understand the mysteries within. Xianxia sage is here. At that moment, a cultivator noticed Chu Kuangren's arrival. By now, Chu Kuangren was known by everyone in the human tribe. When everyone saw him, they immediately stood up to welcome him. Greetings, Sage Tsang. Tsang Xianxian, you are also here to comprehend this Immortal's Wall? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Let me have a look. He chuckled and looked at the Immortal's Wall. Everyone stood quietly at the side, not wanting to disturb him. We are unable to comprehend the moves left behind on the Immortal's Wall. However, Tsang Xianxian is different. Perhaps he might really succeed. Not bad. They looked at Chu Kuangren with hope in their eyes. When Chu Kuangren looked at the Immortal's stone rampart, he could not help but spread the 7 emotions illusory netherworld melody that he had learned. The surrounding cultivators narrowed their eyes. This ripple is similar to the one left behind by the immortals on the stone wall. It can't be. Could it be that Sage Tsang has already comprehended it? I've been studying here for close to 1,000 years without gaining anything. However, the moment the Sage Tsang arrived, I immediately had a reaction. Could this be the difference between us and the Sage Tsang? While Chu Kuangren was trying to comprehend the moves left behind on the Immortal's Wall, his consciousness was suddenly pulled into a strange space. It was a mountain peak surrounded by clouds and mist. In front of him sat a white-haired old man. The old man noticed his arrival and chuckled. "Little fella from the later generations, we finally meet. Xiao AI, analyze this old man in front of you." Chu Kuangren subconsciously called out to Xiao AI. As an omniscient spirit, Xiao AI had never disappointed him. Information about this old man soon appeared in his mind. Without a doubt, the old man in front of him was the one left behind on the Immortal's wall. He was also an immortal who came to the firmament star a long time ago. He called himself the Ancient Immortal. The one who appeared in front of him now was only a sliver of consciousness left behind by the Ancient Immortal on the Immortal's wall. "Greetings, Immortal." Chu Kuangren calmly bowed. "I wonder if you have anything to say to me, Immortal?" "Nothing much. It's just that I was curious when I sensed that you were in the river of time of the heavenly Tao. That's why I left this sliver of consciousness behind, hoping to meet you." Entering the river of time was not something that anyone could do. Not even an immortal could do it. However, Chu Kuangren, a cultivator who was not even an immortal, had traveled through the river of time from the later generations to this era. That made the Ancient Immortal very curious. He guessed that Chu Kuangren had some kind of big secret on him. That was why he wanted to meet Chu Kuangren. "I see. May I know where you're from, Immortal?" Chu Kuangren nodded and asked curiously. "The Green Emperor Galaxy is not that far from your solar system. It's about 60 to 70,000 light-years away. Why did you come here, Immortal?" "I met an enemy and was severely injured. That's why I came here," the Ancient Immortal said helplessly. Chu Kuangren was speechless. Someone who could injure an immortal must be an immortal as well. Taking advantage of this opportunity to meet the immortal, Chu Kuangren took the opportunity to ask a lot about immortals, broadening his knowledge. The Ancient Immortal answered everything he knew, taking it as a sign of good karma. "Little friend, I've left an immortal technique on this stone wall. How much you can learn from it depends on yourself. If fate allows it, we may meet again in the vast universe." In the end, the Ancient Immortal chuckled and his figure began to dissipate. Chu Kuangren stood up and bowed again. Then, his consciousness returned to his physical body and continued to learn the technique on the stone wall. He had already learned the illusory 7 emotions melody through the 9 scrolls, so it was a walk in the park for him now. Moreover, after learning the technique on the stone wall, his understanding of this immortal technique had become even more complete. "Xianxia Sage, have you learned the mysteries of this stone wall?" A cultivator asked curiously when he saw that Chu Kuangren had woken up. "Just a little." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "The sage is indeed a sage. He's really different. We've been trying to learn this technique for so many years without any results, but the sage has it the moment he arrives. Yeah, we can't compete with him." The crowd sighed. Chu Kuangren casually exchanged a few words with them before he returned to the Yanwu tribe. Yanwu, Fenrir, and the others gathered together as if they were discussing something. When they saw Chu Kuangren, they went up to him. "What are you guys talking about?" "Xianxia Sage, we're discussing about an alliance." "Oh, haven't you guys finished discussing this?" "It's not difficult to form an alliance, but we still lack a leader. We've unanimously decided to appoint Xianxia Sage as our leader," Yanwu said solemnly. At the side, Fenrir nodded as well. "The human tribes have been divided for many years. It's time for this situation to end. If we want to fight against the deities, the human tribe needs to work together and unite. For this, we need a leader who can guide us. And that leader is you, Xianxia Sage." Chapter 787. That person is you. Chu Kuangren was stunned when he heard that Yanwu wanted to nominate him as the leader of the human tribe. He then looked at the others. The others looked at him expectantly. He nodded slightly. "If that's the case, it would be impolite of me to decline." According to history, he would have become the human king. Therefore, he did not reject it. Everyone smiled when they heard him agree. "All right, I'll summon the leaders of the other tribes in a few days so that everyone can witness it," Yanwu said. "That's right. It's time for the human tribe to have a king. Everyone was discussing excitedly. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, was very calm. Beside him, Green Robe could not help but lament. When Chu Kuangren said that he wanted to be the human king, he believed him. However, he did not expect that Chu Kuangren would become the king in such a short period of time. It was too fast. A few days later, Yen Wu and the others had finished discussing everything. The leaders of the various tribes had no objections to nominating Chu Kuangren as the leader of the human tribe. After all, everyone had witnessed his contributions and strength, so they did not have the ability to object even if they wanted to. This was the biggest event in the history of the human tribe. Hence, after several days of discussion, Yen Wu and the other leaders decided to hold a ceremony at the Emperor Mountain to announce Chu Kuangren as the leader of the human tribe. The Emperor Mountain. This was the place where the first human cultivator became an emperor. Although that emperor had long passed away, the Emperor Mountain was recognized by the heavenly Tao and became the place where most human cultivators could ascend to. This place had a special meaning to the human tribe, so Yen Wu and the others chose this place to announce Chu Kuangren as the leader of the human tribe. Today, the Emperor Mountain was surrounded by countless humans. Almost all the leaders of the human tribes were here. At the peak of the Emperor Mountain, there was an altar. In the past, this altar was used by believers to worship the deities, but today, it was used to worship the heavens and earth. Under the watchful eyes of countless humans, Chu Kuangren slowly walked up to the altar, where a large golden seal was placed on top of it. This large seal was made by Qiyang using the rarest ores contributed by each tribe, which were then forged by Qiyang. This seal wasn't a very impressive treasure. It could not even compare to an ordinary emperor weapon. But this was a keepsake. It symbolized the determination of the tribes to elect Chu Kuangren as the human king. Chu Kuangren slowly walked onto the altar and declared loudly, "With the heavens and the earth as my witness, I, Song, am now the ruler of the human race. From now on, I will definitely lead the human race to prosperity and development. I will let the glory of the human race shine across the world." With the help of his psyche power, his voice resounded throughout Mount D. Countless humans heard it. They looked at the back of that figure and knew that the human race was about to usher in a brand new era. Boom, boom. Suddenly, the clouds in the sky surged. A bluish-purple lightning pillar descended from the sky. Countless Tao patterns interweaved within it, emanating powerful waves of divine power. The gods had made their move. Chu Kuangren could not help but chuckle at that. Using his mind power, he easily shattered the thunderbolt. Today is a good day for the human race. But do you deities want to join in the fun too? Chu Kuangren scoffed. Song, the human race won't last long under your leadership. A cold snort came from the void. Chu Kuangren knew that it was a master god, the lightning master god. Let's wait and see then. By the way, could you please return to the godly mountain and tell them that I'll be paying them a visit in the near future? Chu Kuangren's words were like a huge bomb dropped on the crowd, making them dizzy. The godly mountain was the base camp of the deities. It was the place where the master gods resided. Since ancient times, outsiders were forbidden from entering. This was especially true for humans, who were not even allowed to go near it. However, Chu Kuangren had said that he would be going to the godly mountain soon. They did not think that he was going there just for a visit. Besides, the deities would not welcome him there anyway. There could only be one reason for that. Chu Kuangren was going to the godly mountain to pick a fight. No way, no way. Chu Kuangren had just become the ruler of the human race, and he was already going to the godly mountain to pick a fight with the deities. This is too much of a rush. They were not ready yet. Above the clouds, even without the lightning master god's message, the master gods who were observing everything in the dark were already trembling with rage. Arrogant. He's just too arrogant. This song is too lawless. What does he think the godly mountain is? Does he think he can just come and go as he pleases? What a joke. That's right. If he dares to come, we'll make sure he never returns. The master gods were furious at Chu Kuangren's words. They swore that if Chu Kuangren dared to come to the godly mountain, they would kill him at all costs to prevent any future troubles. I'll wait for your death on the godly mountain then. The lightning master god snorted before he disappeared without a trace. The ceremony continued. Chu Kuangren raised the golden seal that was the size of 2 palms. The heavens and earth shook. Following that, a large number of golden auspicious clouds appeared in the sky. The golden seal was lifted by an invisible force and lifted into the air. Countless golden auspicious clouds surged and entered the golden seal. The seal radiated with a dazzling brilliance as countless Taoist patterns circulated. The crowd could not help but be dumbfounded at this strange sight. When all the golden auspicious clouds were absorbed into the seal, 3 words appeared on the seal. Human Ruler Seal. This is the human ruler seal bestowed by the heavenly Tao. Even the heavenly Tao is protecting the human race. This is great. Sage Tsang is indeed the ruler of the human race recognized by the heavenly Tao. Ha! The rise of the human race is unstoppable. Human ruler, human ruler. Greetings, human ruler. Yen Wu and his tribesmen were the first to kneel on the ground, followed by the rest of the tribesmen. Greetings, human ruler. Not only the humans on the Emperor Mountain, but the firmament humans who were scattered across the land also seemed to have sensed it and knelt towards the Emperor Mountain. Human ruler. At this moment, the human race had welcomed their ruler. On the godly mountain from afar, the master gods had also witnessed this phenomenon. Compared to the excited humans, their expressions were a little grim. A name bestowed by the heavenly Tao, and the power of the heavenly Tao on Tsang. Could the human race really be the next ruler of the realm? D***. Why did an anomaly like Tsang appear in the human race? Aren't humans supposed to be weak and lowly? The master gods were confused. All this while, they had regarded the human race as a labor force and a tool to provide their faith. They had never seen them as opponents. However, this time, they felt a threat from this weak race. It was a threat that was far stronger than the other powerful races in the land. Could it be that the human race could overthrow the rule of the master gods? Such a thought appeared in the master gods' minds. They quickly shook their heads and cast this ridiculous thought out. How could it be possible? How could the human race overthrow them? It's Tsang. The human race only has Tsang, who has the ability to fight against the master gods. As long as we kill him, the human race will be nothing but a pile of loose sand. There's nothing to fear. The master god's killing intent towards Chu Kuangren intensified. Chapter 788. On Mount Emperor. The human ruler's seal floated in the air before it slowly floated back into Chu Kuangren's palm. He felt that the seal was different now. Although the material did not change, the energy on it had completely changed. Shao AI, analyze it. Analyzing. The human ruler seal is a heavenly fortune treasure that gathers the power of the heavens and the human race's fortune. It's a weapon exclusive to the human ruler. New information about the human ruler's seal flowed into his mind. A smile appeared on Chu Kuangren's face. A weapon exclusive to the human ruler. He did not expect that the ceremony would yield such a result. The heavenly Tao still favored the human race. The human race was indeed the main character of the world. He suspected that even without him, the heavenly Tao would still support others to become human rulers and let them fight against the deities. Chu Kuangren thought for a while and decided not to care anymore. With a thought, the human ruler's seal instantly disappeared from his palm and was stored into his soul. The human ruler's seal was very mysterious. It was a heavenly fortune treasure. As long as one was a human ruler, they could easily control it without refining it. However, if one was not a human ruler, they would not be able to use it. The ceremony ended. The crowd gradually left Mount Emperor. There were many things to be done from now on. For example, unifying the tribes, migrating the population, and so on. Chu Kuangren handled all of these in an orderly manner. When he discussed with Yen Wu and the others, he could quickly and accurately point out some of their shortcomings and improve on them. For example, the migration of the population. Yen Wu suggested for each tribe to migrate to one tribe so that they could take care of each other. His idea was not bad. However, he neglected the fact that each tribe lived in different places and had different living habits. If everyone were to be gathered together, it would definitely cause conflicts in life and even culture. Chu Kuangren suggested to first send people to each tribe to bring some advanced culture and technology to gradually transform them. When the time came, they would then integrate the population together. When that time came, the era of the tribal structure would end. It would be replaced by a nation. The king is far-sighted. We want to take things one step at a time, but the king thinks 10 steps at a time. He's much better than us. Yeah, who else would be the king if not him? In private, Yan Wu and Fenrir could not help but exclaim. After Chu Kuangren became the king, he did not immediately implement a series of reform policies. Instead, he took things step by step like boiling a frog. After all, in less than a year, weapon refinement and pill refinement alone had caused a huge change in the human race. Continuous changes would only catch people off guard. Fortunately, I was once a sect leader. Otherwise, I might not have been able to handle so many things. Sometimes, Chu Kuangren would lament to himself. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. Compared to the development of the entire human race, these few years were not even worth mentioning. For some cultivators, it was just a snap of a finger. However, in these few years, Chu Kuangren had raised the standard of living of the commoners at the bottom of the hierarchy by several levels. Now, all over the human race, people were praising his great achievements. King, this is the new population increase of each tribe this year. Yan Wu took out a letter and handed it to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren glanced at it. Not bad. Compared to last year, it has increased by 30%. Is there any pressure on the food supply? Thanks to the rice, potatoes, and other plants discovered by our king, the food reserves of the human race are basically under no pressure anymore. Yan Wu laughed heartily. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. In his opinion, the foundation of the human race's continued strength lay in the next generation. As long as the population increased, the number of cultivators would also increase, and the number of strong cultivators would also increase correspondingly. Compared to the other living beings on this land, the human race was slightly weaker. However, they would still give birth. Moreover, it would only take a dozen years for them to mature. Unlike some beasts and ferocious beasts, which took hundreds or thousands of years to gestate, no one knew how long it would take for them to mature. Chu Kuangren looked outside the house. Unknowingly, snow had started to fall from the sky. The whole land was covered in a silvery white color. Chu Kuangren got up and walked out. Looking at the falling snow, he could not help but reach out and grab a snowflake, letting it melt in his palm. Behind him, Qingyi walked up and put a cloak on him. Thank you. Chu Kuangren felt a little warmer after he put on the cloak. He could use his mind power to isolate the chill, but compared to that, he preferred to live like a normal person. He wanted to use his 5 senses to feel the nature of the world. In the past few years, his soul energy had improved a little, but it was a pity that this physical body's talent in chi refinement was extremely poor. Compared to his original body's amazing talent, it was the polar opposite. Therefore, in the past few years, he was too lazy to cultivate chi refinement and focused on his mind power. As for the problem of this physical body's lifespan, he was not worried about it. A few pills would be enough to make him immortal. Chu Kuangren looked at the snowflakes that gradually covered half of the courtyard and smiled. This year's snow is coming especially fast. Auspicious snow foretells a good harvest. I hope there will be a good harvest next year. Definitely, Yan Wu said with a smile. However, after 7 days, the snow did not stop. On the contrary, it was getting heavier. Chu Kuangren looked at the snow outside the house. Beside him, Yan Wu frowned and said, "My king, this snow has been falling for a few days now. Now, there are news of snow disasters everywhere. If this continues, the crops planted by the people will all die. I'm afraid next year will be difficult." Cultivators could not eat or drink, but ordinary people could not. A snow disaster was enough to make it difficult for countless people to make a living. Send out cultivators to various places to help. Also, how's the greenhouse technique that I asked you to teach? The greenhouse technique was a method that Chu Kuangren used to help the crops survive the snow disasters. It allowed the crops to survive at a suitable temperature. The greenhouse method is indeed effective. However, there are too many crops planted in the various places. We can only protect a portion of them. Furthermore, if this snow continues, I'm afraid that even the greenhouse method won't be able to last for long, Yanwu said with worry in his eyes. Don't worry, this snow disaster will stop soon. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He stood up and looked into the distance. I've said before that I'll visit them. It seems that they can't wait any longer. This snow disaster is their signal to invite me over. Yanwu's eyes narrowed slightly. He instantly understood what Chu Kuangren meant. This snow disaster, is it the work of the gods? Isn't controlling the natural changes of the world their specialty? Chu Kuangren said with a chuckle. A cold ray of light shot out from his eyes. Beside him, Yanwu felt that the temperature around him had dropped by a few degrees. Even an emperor like him could not help but shiver. My king, do you need to inform the God-defying pavilion to arrange for manpower? The God-defying pavilion was the human tribe's powerhouse. Most of the human heavenly honorable realm powerhouses were hidden within it. Naturally, these people were now under Chu Kuangren's command. No need. I'll make a trip myself. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He picked up the cloak beside him and put it on. He then walked towards the door and disappeared into the void after a few steps. Chapter 789. The Godly Mountain was where the deities resided. Here, the deities ruled over everything. 33 palaces stood at the peak of the Godly Mountain, representing the 33 overgods. The most majestic palace in the middle was surrounded by countless Taoist runes that shrouded it like a protective barrier. Do you guys think that song will come? An indifferent voice came from one of the white palaces. It was the voice of the god of light. He will come. Back at Emperor Mountain, he said that he would come. Now that the human race has suffered from this snowstorm, if he doesn't come, the human race will not have enough food to survive next year. As long as he comes, he will die. That's right. This is the Godly Mountain, our home ground. Divine power is abundant here, and no one will be a match for us if we fight here. Not to mention the trap that time and space have set up here. Voices came from the palaces one after another. In the past few years, they had witnessed the development of the human race. In just a few short years, the human race had prospered under Chu Kuangren's leadership. Aside from the common people living in peace and contentment, a large number of cultivators had also emerged. This made them feel fearful. To have such a change in just a few years, what about thousands or tens of thousands of years? It was not an empty promise for the human race to overthrow the deity's rule. At that moment, an indifferent voice was heard. The overgods fell silent for a moment. The atmosphere seemed to have become a little tense. Outside the Godly Mountain, a figure in a white cloak walked out of the void. Chu Kuangren looked at the towering Godly Mountain that was emanating a vast amount of divine power. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. So this is the Godly Mountain. It really does emanate a disgusting amount of divine power. Buzz, buzz. Ripples began to form in the void. One by one, the deities flew out of the Godly Mountain. Some controlled the power of ice, some controlled storms, and some were covered in golden light with domineering auras. All kinds of divine powers intertwined with each other. How dare you trespass on the Godly Mountain? A higher god shouted coldly. Song, I'm here for the human race, to seek justice. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Song. The moment this name came out, all the gods present couldn't help but narrow their eyes. This name could be said to be like thunder piercing through their ears. Song, the leader of the human race, the person who had slain a god. He was the first human in history to slay a master god, and he was an existence that caused the dignity of the gods to fall to the ground. Song, what is he doing here? Nonsense. The gods and the heavens are irreconcilable enemies. He's obviously here to cause trouble. Stop him, don't let him enter the divine mountains. The faces of the gods darkened, and after recovering from their shock, All kinds of divine power burst forth, transforming into a terrifying torrent of divine power that swept out. Trash, get the hell away from me, Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Telekinesis surged out, shattering countless divine powers. Dozens of gods were blasted away by this psychic power and vomited blood. Some of the weaker ones even exploded and died on the spot. To Chu Kuangren, these deities who were below the Lord level were no different from small fries. They posed no threat to him at all. In fact, they couldn't even stop his footsteps. The deities were blasted away by the psychic power. Chu Kuangren walked into the divine mountain. Around him, the deities fell to the ground one after another, screaming in agony as their blood stained the ground. How powerful! Is this the combat strength that can kill a master god? That's terrifying. The deities felt an indescribable fear as their scalps went numb. It was too terrifying. It was the first time in many years that they had seen such a terrifying human who could slay gods like they were slaughtering pigs and dogs. Was this still the same human that they saw as ants? Let him come up. A voice came from the peak of the divine mountain. It was the Master God's voice. Upon hearing that, the deities no longer dared to stop Chu Kuangren. A wise choice, Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Then he ignored the deities around him and walked towards the peak of the divine mountain. Every step he took covered a distance of 10,000 meters. Not long after, he arrived at the peak and saw the 33 majestic sacred palaces. He sneered. What a luxurious place to live. Without another word, he lifted his hand and pointed a finger. Telekinesis surged. The flames between the heavens and earth gathered. With a single thought, the myriad deity calamity fire lotus appeared. The tribulation flames shot out and smashed into one of the black sacred palaces. In an instant, terrifying flames erupted and engulfed the entire sacred palace. The darkness master god then dashed out from within. He looked at Chu Kuangren with a grim expression. Lunatic, don't you want to solve this snowstorm disaster? Why did you attack the moment you appeared? Chu Kuangren glanced at the darkness sacred palace. The sacred palace was burned by the flames, but it was not damaged at all. The material of the sacred palaces was rather special. Was this the place where the master gods resurrected? Chu Kuangren initially wanted to see if he could destroy this divine mountain, but it seemed like he could not do so for now. When he heard what the darkness master god said, he sneered. Don't you guys want to kill me? Then what's there to talk about? Besides, I'm not here to negotiate with you guys. I'm here to slay a god. As soon as he said that, his telekinesis surged again. Humph, how arrogant. Why don't you take a look at where you are? This is the divine mountain, our territory. It's not your turn to be arrogant this time. Kill. Powerful divine power erupted from each of the sacred palaces. Then the lightning master god, the light master god, the wood master god, the demonic sea god, and the other master gods walked out one by one. All sorts of divine power shrouded Chu Kuangren. Under the divine mountain's blessing, their auras were much stronger than they were in other places. Chu Kuangren chuckled as mysterious Taoist patterns circulated around his body. Unification mode activated. With the blessing of the heavenly Tao and the ultimate Taoist power, his telekinesis surged out like a torrent and slammed into the surroundings. The master gods were shocked when they saw that. He's much stronger than before. How is this possible? How can this human improve so quickly? It's only been a few years, and he's already improved so much. The master gods were dumbfounded. Without the blessing of faith, the strength of the gods was fixed, and it was very difficult for them to improve. However, Chu Kuangren had improved so much in just a few years. This shocked them. If all humans were like Chu Kuangren, then it would be a piece of cake for the gods to be overthrown. A main god who is stuck in his own ways? Is that very surprising to you? Chu Kuangren's tone was filled with mockery. To him, innate life forms like the gods were too pitiful. They were born with unparalleled strength, but no matter how many years passed, they would never improve without faith. Even if they had faith, once it collapsed, they would immediately return to their original state and be tightly bound. Divine demonic heart ray. Divine wood spike. Great light judgment. Great dark obliteration. With a single thought, all techniques return to the void. Against the impact of the divine power, Chu Kuangren unleashed his strongest defensive technique, and a giant whirlpool formed around him. The divine power was devoured by the whirlpool and disintegrated one by one. With a single thought, 10,000 blades create a disaster. Chu Kuangren mobilized his mind power and countless spiritual weapons formed. Chapter 790. With a single thought, I shall summon an army of 10,000 blades. Chu Kuangren slowly raised his hand. His mind power erupted, and an endless amount of spiritual qi gathered, turning into spiritual weapons that hovered above the godly mountain. The sovereigns looked extremely grim in the face of the endless amount of spiritual weapons. They even wanted to rush into the temple to hide. At that moment, 8 white light pillars shot up into the sky from the godly mountain. Countless mysterious Taoist patterns enveloped half of the godly mountain. The spatial structure of the surroundings started to change. An energy that Chu Kuangren was very familiar with enveloped him. It's the power of space-time. It's you again. Chu Kuangren looked at a silvery white temple, from which a silvery white figure walked out. It was the space-time overgod. Chu Kuangren came to the godly mountain for 2 reasons. The first was to seek justice for the snow disaster, and the second was to find the space-time overgod. He had been thinking about the space-time overgod ever since they last met. To be more precise, he was thinking about the space-time overgod's divinity. That was the key to opening up the river of time. The space-time overgod looked at Chu Kuangren with a frown. His opponent's gaze gave him goosebumps. It was the same feeling he had when they first met. It was as if he had become a rabbit that was targeted by a hunter. That made him very, very unhappy. He was the space-time overgod, a powerhouse among the 33 sovereigns who was second only to the godly masters. How could he be treated like a rabbit? How could he tolerate that? Song, this enchantment is set up by my divine weapon, the space-time prison. No matter how strong your mind power is, you won't be able to escape. The space-time overgod snorted. Then he roared, Time seal. The 8 white light pillars around him emitted a dazzling light, and a terrifying energy that could seal time instantly erupted. Everything within the space-time prison fell silent. After casting the time seal, the space-time overgod's face turned pale. It was obvious that casting the time seal on a powerhouse like Chu Kuangren had drained a lot of his divine power. How terrifying! Even with the space-time prison's help, casting the time seal on him still drained me of half of my divine power. The space-time overgod was in disbelief. Fortunately, his time restriction took effect. As promised, the surrounding sovereigns immediately attacked Chu Kuangren the moment he unleashed his time seal. All kinds of dazzling divine power flashed. The space-time master god breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was over. No one could survive such a situation. Boom, boom, boom. The light of divine power enveloped the entire space-time cage. Boundless divine power filled the cage and exploded one after another. Large swaths of the void exploded one after another. This energy caused the entire divine mountain to shake. Looks of joy appeared on the faces of the chief gods. Great, we've finally killed this guy. Ha, no one can offend the dignity of a god, and you are no exception. Song, after you die, the human race is no longer a threat. It's time to make those humans submit. That's right. Release the news that Song is dead. Let all the creatures on this land know the consequences of offending a god. Especially the humans. Let them know that their king is dead. If they want to continue living, they can only submit to us. Otherwise, I don't mind killing half of the human race first. The sovereigns were discussing how to deal with the humans. They had been living such a miserable life for the past few years. They were sovereigns, yet they were suppressed by a mere human. Now that they had finally killed Song, they naturally wanted to vent their frustrations. Some of the sovereigns even suggested that they kill half of the humans first. Kill the humans? Then I guess I'll have to bathe the divine mountain in blood first. An indifferent voice suddenly rang out. The sovereigns who were passionately discussing how to deal with the humans suddenly fell silent like ducks that had been grabbed by the neck. They turned to look at the space-time cage. After that violent divine power attack, the space-time cage was filled with a large amount of divine power, making it impossible to see what was happening inside. However, they had no doubt that in this world, as long as one endured such an attack, no one would be able to survive. Not even the sovereigns. Impossible, impossible, how is he still alive? Space-time, what's going on? The sovereigns looked at the space-time master god who had cast the space-time cage. The space-time master god was also a little confused. That's impossible. My time restriction did work. Did you really hit him? The space-time master god looked at the other sovereigns. Nonsense, do you think so many of us sovereigns missed? The light master god could not help but say. Since the time seal worked, the sovereigns did not miss. Could it be that they were hallucinating? Hallucinating? All the sovereigns stared at the space-time cage with solemn gazes. Boom! A terrifying wave of mind power erupted. The divine power turbulence in the space-time cage was blasted away, revealing a person standing in the air with his black hair fluttering in the wind. It was Chu Kuangren. He was unscathed. The only loss was that half of the cloak on his back had been devoured by the divine power, leaving only half of it. It was not very elegant. Chu Kuangren took out half of the cloak and sighed softly. This cloak was made for me by Qing Yi a few years ago. It has been with me for many years, but I can't believe it's broken today. What are you going to give me as compensation? The sovereigns gulped, their eyes filled with horror. What the F***ck? They had tried their best, but all they managed to do was destroy a cloak? Are you kidding me? Why don't you pay with your lives? Chu Kuangren said calmly as he kept the cloak. A cold, murderous intent erupted from his body and instantly filled half of the godly mountain. The godly mountain, which was always warm like spring, suddenly felt like it had fallen into the depths of winter. All the sovereigns were trembling in fear. How can there be such a terrifying human? One of the sovereigns stared at the mountaintop and could not help but say with trembling lips. For countless years, the godly mountain has been sacred and inviolable. But today, it has fallen into an unprecedented situation because of a single human. This is the lord of the human tribe. This is too terrifying. Sovereigns, do you have a way to defeat him? In the past, they had never doubted the abilities of the sovereigns. However, Chu Kuangren's strength had shattered their understanding and refreshed their worldview. This even made them doubt the omnipotent sovereigns. At the peak of the godly mountain, the space-time sovereign looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. Impossible. My time seal worked. How can you be unharmed? This is impossible. Chu Kuangren looked at the space-time sovereign who was on the verge of losing his composure and said calmly, "Nothing is impossible. Your space-time Tao is too weak." At that, the space-time sovereign was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He instantly flew into a rage and said furiously, "My space-time Tao is too weak? What kind of joke is this? I'm the space-time sovereign of this world. I don't know how you broke free from the time seal's control, but you're still trapped in the space-time prison enchanted world. We still have the upper hand in this aspect. You can only wait for your death." Chu Kuangren could not help but laugh. "I've already told you that your space-time Tao is too weak. Do you think this broken cage can trap me?" Chapter 791. I've already told you that your space-time Tao is too weak. Watch as I break this cage breaker, Chu Kuangren said. Then, he gently raised his hand. A palm-sized disc appeared in his palm. The disc was engraved with countless mysterious Taoist patterns. What is that? The god of space's pupils dilated. He sensed a never-before-seen space-time energy from the disc. He was the over-god of space, the god who controlled the space-time of this world. But at this moment, he felt that the space-time energy he controlled was like a small stream facing a boundless ocean in front of the disc. The gap was so huge that it was unbelievable. It was some kind of space-time treasure. However, how could such a space-time treasure exist in this world? That was impossible. At that moment, Chu Kuangren made his move in the space-time cage. He shouted indifferently, "Time and space mirror, open." The temporal mirror spun, and the 9 rings on it spread out, one on top of the other, forming a 3-dimensional device that looked like a globe. A boundless and terrifying space-time force spread out from the space-time mirror, crazily attacking the 8 white light pillars around it. With a loud bang, the pillar of light exploded in response. The space-time cage was broken. The god of space suffered a backlash when the divine weapon was broken. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood as he looked at the temporal mirror in Chu Kuangren's hand in disbelief. What is this thing? Chu Kuangren kept the temporal mirror after breaking the space-time cage. It was a powerful item, but it consumed a lot of energy. He could not use it for a long time with his current strength. In fact, he could only use it in the past few years after he understood the mysteries of the first 4 rings on the temporal mirror. Just now, the god of space's seal of time had indeed been effective against him. It had frozen his time, but in the next instant, it had triggered a reaction from the space-time mirror, which had easily shattered the space-time power. That was why Chu Kuangren could use his mind power to block the divine power attack. The temporal mirror was a supreme deity-grade treasure. Chu Kuangren suspected that it was even more terrifying than an immortal weapon. Playing with the space-time Tao in front of it was a joke. Now it's my turn. Chu Kuangren took advantage of the moment when the space-time cage was broken to appear in front of the god of space. The god of space was shocked and immediately activated his divine power. Time restriction. He used his time divine art again. Time halt. However, at the same time, Chu Kuangren had also used his temporal ability. When the 2 forces of time collided, ripples appeared in the surrounding void. It was as if a freeze button had been pressed around Chu Kuangren and the temporal overgod, and everything stopped moving in an instant. But in the next instant, Chu Kuangren's mind power surged out and transformed into a giant golden sword that slashed across the space-time master god's neck. Blood splattered everywhere as the god of space's head fell to the ground. Chu Kuangren's time ability had gained the upper hand. The faces of the surrounding sovereigns changed dramatically. The god of space was dead. Chu Kuangren glanced at his opponent's corpse and then turned to the other overgods. "All right, it's your turn now." But at this moment, behind him, the god of space's corpse glowed with white light. Countless Tao patterns flowed around it, and the blood flowing on the ground flowed back into the god of space's body, reattaching its head. It was as if the entire process of the god of space's death had been replayed in reverse, and he was resurrected. That was one of the god of space's divine abilities, time reversal. It was a powerful divine ability. However, it consumed a terrifying amount of divine power as well. He had only used it once, but the divine power that he had expended to deal with Chu Kuangren was now completely depleted. Seeing that Chu Kuangren's back was facing him, the god of space immediately took out a silver-white spear and stabbed it at him. He no longer cared about his dignity as a deity. As long as he could kill Chu Kuangren, he would not mind losing his dignity. The silver-white spear pierced through the air. Although it wasn't imbued with any divine power, the strength of the god of space's divine body and the indestructible nature of the divine spear in his hand was something that even an overgod wouldn't be able to withstand if they were caught off guard. The spear pierced through Chu Kuangren's back and came out from the god of space's chest. The god of space was shocked. "That's a spatial technique. You have spatial techniques like that?" Chu Kuangren turned around and glanced at him. "I told you that your space-time Tao is too weak. You can't even detect such a simple spatial technique, let alone ambushing me. What a fool." The god of space's face turned green from being mocked before his death. However, he still had one last question. "How did you know I'm not dead?" Chu Kuangren had already chopped off his head. To others, he was already dead. Who would be wary of a dead person? "Do I need to tell you?" Chu Kuangren said indifferently. He then used his mind power to destroy the god of space's head. The god of space did not know that the omniscient spirit's analysis had revealed all of his divine abilities to Chu Kuangren. Of course, that included the time reversal technique. After Chu Kuangren killed the god of space, he had already set up a spatial portal behind him to guard against him. The god of space's divine weapon had only pierced the spatial portal, which was connected to the god of space's back. He had only reaped what he sowed with that spear attack. The mighty space-time overgod had died to his most prized space-time technique. It was truly an ironic thing to say. Shao AI, analyze this and see if he's completely dead. Chu Kuangren said to the omniscient spirit. Space-time techniques were extremely tricky. Although Chu Kuangren was well-versed in them, his opponent was still the god of space. The god of space's aura is completely gone. Upon receiving Shao AI's response, Chu Kuangren nodded and summoned a ball of golden red flames that landed on the spatial master deity's corpse. Once the spatial master deity's body was reduced to ashes, all that was left was a silvery white rhombus crystal. The space-time godhead. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he kept the godhead that he had been eyeing for a long time. The rest of the overgods could not help but feel shaken when they saw that the god of space, the strongest among them, was dead. They looked at Chu Kuangren with unprecedented fear in their eyes. I think I heard that one of you suggested killing half of the humans first? Chu Kuangren glared at the overgods. With a lift of his arm, spiritual qi gathered and turned into thousands of weapons that shrouded the entire godly mountain. Song, call a truce. I suggest a truce. From now on, the celestial tribe and the humans shall never cross paths again. We shall stop this snow disaster. One of the overgods said anxiously. However, when Chu Kuangren heard that, he gently lowered his palm, and countless spiritual weapons rained down from the sky, bombarding every corner of the godly mountain. One by one, the deities fell under this attack. A truce? Sure, but let me kill half of the deities first, Chu Kuangren said. With a lift of his arm, a new round of spiritual weapons was formed. Chapter 792. The spiritual qi converged into a sharp weapon. Tens of thousands of spiritual weapons enveloped the entire godly mountain like a torrential downpour. Boom, boom, boom. The entire divine mountain trembled violently, and the gods fell one after another under this power. Their divine blood dyed a large area of the ground. The sovereigns all had incomparably ugly looks on their faces. They wanted to stop Chu Kuangren, but they were powerless to do so. Half of the deities on the godly mountain had been slaughtered by Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren, stop this right now. The divine overgod could not stand it any longer. He roared and charged towards Chu Kuangren as he watched his subordinates being slaughtered one after another. Holy judgment! He unleashed a punch, and a large number of Taoist patterns gathered on it, forming a dazzling white light pillar. Useless attack. Chu Kuangren pointed his finger, and his mind power turned into a golden red fire lotus that shot out, shattering the light pillar and killing the divine overgod. How powerful was he now? The divine soul and earthly soul had double the soul power. The power of his mind power was no less than that of a peak minor Taoist master. Coupled with the power of the heavenly Tao, it had a terrifying suppressive effect on the deities. To the deities, Chu Kuangren's combat strength was no weaker than a great Taoist master's. Not to mention the ultimate technique of rising thoughts. Song, I'll kill you. The darkness overgod could not stand it anymore. With a roar, he gathered his boundless darkness divine power and formed a pitch-black crescent-shaped saber ray. The saber ray contained a terrifying power that seemed to devour everything. Chu Kuangren stood his ground. With a single thought, chilling qi gathered. It was so powerful that it almost froze the entire godly mountain. Everything withered, and the void froze. The saber ray shattered into countless ice shards, and the chilling qi engulfed the darkness overgod like a hot knife through butter, freezing half of his divine body. In the void, the spiritual weapons gathered and descended. Boom! The darkness overgod was shattered into countless pieces. Another overgod had fallen. The faces of the sovereigns were already rather ashen. Could it be that the godly mountain was going to be destroyed by a single human? No, that was impossible. The overgods trembled in disbelief. Just as Chu Kuangren was massacring the deities, A surge of divine power that was far more powerful than the average Lord Gods suddenly erupted from the godly mountain. The entire godly mountain trembled because of this surge of divine power. It was as if a forbidden existence was awakening. Chu Kuangren had also sensed this aura. He narrowed his eyes. Oh, this power! He actually felt a trace of threat. As for the other sovereigns, looks of wild joy appeared on their faces. It's the Divine Master! The Divine Master has awakened. Oh, this is great, this is great. How many years has it been? I've waited for this day for so many years. The Divine Master has finally awakened. Song, this place will not tolerate your arrogance. All the sovereigns looked towards the centermost shrine, incomparably excited. The runes around the Temple of Glory dissipated one by one, and the massive divine power aura grew stronger and stronger. Dong, dong, a series of footsteps that sounded as if they were stepping on everyone's hearts rang out. Inside the Temple of Glory, a black-robed, silver-haired man slowly walked out. His deep, obsidian-like eyes swept across the surroundings, and anyone who was stared at, including the overgods, could not help but shudder from the depths of their hearts. That man was the Divine Master. The Divine Master, Huang. His gaze swept across the godly mountain and finally landed on Chu Kuangren with a hint of surprise in his eyes. A human. I can't believe that the powerhouse who caused the godly mountain to tremble is a lowly human. The Divine Master was very surprised. He was originally in a deep slumber to recover from the injuries inflicted by the immortals a long time ago. However, before he could fully recover from his injuries, he sensed the godly mountain trembling and sensed that an enemy so powerful that even the overgods could not handle was approaching. That was why he interrupted his slumber and woke up. However, what surprised him was that the powerhouse who caused the entire godly mountain to tremble was only a human. To him, it was a little unbelievable that such a powerhouse could be born from such a lowly and weak race. I've been in a deep slumber for so long. Have you all sunk so low? The Divine Master looked at the overgods and said indifferently. The sovereigns instantly fell rather silent. They felt ashamed. As a overgod, they had allowed a human to bully them. It was a huge blow to the dignity that the celestial tribe had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years. Forget it. Let me deal with this person first, then we'll talk about this, the Divine Master said indifferently as he looked at Chu Kuangren. He gently lifted his arm, and a majestic black divine power suddenly erupted and swept towards Chu Kuangren. Furthermore, this divine power carried an aura of destruction. Finally, an opponent that can force me to use my full strength has appeared in the celestial tribe. Chu Kuangren chuckled. His mind power surged, and thousands of spiritual soldiers surged out like a flood. The two energies collided, and the godly mountain shook a few times. This strength is indeed shocking even to the gods. The Divine Master glanced at Chu Kuangren. With a lift of his arm, an even more terrifying divine power surged out. Even Chu Kuangren felt troubled by that attack. After he unleashed his mind power, he was pushed back a few hundred meters by his opponent's divine power. If he had not cast a layer of mind power barrier on the surface of his body, that attack would have killed him on the spot. At that thought, Chu Kuangren looked at the Divine Master and smirked. He said, "Is this the power of a Divine Master? It's very powerful indeed." The Divine Master did not say a word. Instead, he unleashed another punch. A majestic divine power erupted. Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, and a huge golden seal appeared. It was the human ruler's seal. When the seal was thrown out, the destructive divine power was shattered by the seal. The man-ruler's seal was like a hot knife through butter as it headed for the Master God. The vast might made the Master God's face change slightly. With a growl, the Divine Master punched the divine seal. Deity's destruction of the universe. After a loud explosion, the ground around them exploded. The human ruler's seal was sent flying. Meanwhile, the Divine Master was also sent flying by the seal. His right fist trembled slightly as his knuckles cracked and blood gushed out. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He had actually been injured. He had been injured by a human. Chu Kuangren controlled the human ruler's seal to float above his head and said, "This is my first time using this against an enemy, so I'm not familiar with it yet. I hope the Divine Master will forgive me if its power is too weak." The overgods around them gulped. The Divine Master was forced back by a single seal. After so many years, aside from that immortal who suddenly came to Firmament Star, this was the first time they had seen the Divine Master being forced back. Its power is indeed a little weak. The Divine Master snorted. He continued to attack. Chu Kuangren did not back down either. The human ruler's seal unleashed a terrifying power in his hands, forcing the Divine Master to retreat. The battle lasted for an entire day and night. The overgods around them did not have any chance to intervene. As the Divine Master was forced back by the human ruler's seal again, the injuries that he had suppressed were showing signs of relapse. How long can you suppress it? Chu Kuangren looked at the Divine Master and smiled. How much of your mind power do you have left then? The Divine Master retorted. Both of them knew that the other had a limit. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.